Dear audience, my name is Luca Trebeșnic, and I have been given the honor of chairing the next panel, which will be devoted to the broad topic of humanities. Short instruction to the speakers. Since we have five excellent speakers planned for this hour, I will politely ask you to conclude your presentation in 10 minutes. If you overstep the time period, then I will, interfere a bit and ask you to conclude. If some time remains, then maybe some discussion can follow, but otherwise we'll have to move to the next panel. So to start, we begin with our esteemed colleague, professor and researcher in various ethnological fields. Her research on smell and the history of medicine has been very well received recently. Today, she will talk about the intersection of art and medicine, mainly focusing on the Ivan Ciobal's Blue Wall, the Maribor University Clinical Center. Professor Dr. Moița Ramșac, the word is yours.
Thank you very much, Luca, and good morning, everybody. First, for the start, I must tell you that I am actually from Maribor. I was born there, and therefore I picked Blue Wall, which is situated at the Maribor University Clinical Center, because when I was a child, this was something that I actually liked a lot. So this is a picture of Blue Wall, how it looks today. I hope you see that I'm moving on. Yeah, okay, super. Today, Maribor's hospital has two entrances, and what we see here is part of the old entrance. So when people in the 50s and late 50s and 60s entered the hospital, they actually had to pass this blue wall. Today, nobody pays much attention to the wall. And even though numerous patients, physicians, and other medical staff pass this artwork many times. So we are talking about the wall that the author, Ivan Ciobal, artist from Maribor, made it in 1959. And the wall is 16 meters long and 3.4 meters high. So it is located at the left of the entrance of General Hospital. Here you can see above with the red, and maybe here another map to have this spatial perspective. So Ivan Ciobal actually made a few artist works that are in public spaces even today. So this is the wall, how it looked like in, I don't know if 59, but for sure in the 60s. And you can see already the difference. Here you have flowers in front of the wall and different pavement in contrast to the picture I showed here, because now cars can pass and there are no flowers in front of it. But anyway, what I wanted to say is that this is Ciobal's most important public artworks. For many years, it was also one of the large blue surface in the city. The artistic composition merges modernist and symbolic elements that express the hospital's mission. So what I'm doing now is trying to actually read the wall without any information, because no written documents exist on how it was built, why it was built. We only have information that it was built in 1959. Not even the daughter of Ivan Ciobal that I spoke to her, she doesn't remember that father would ever spoke about this wall or ever showed the pictures about this wall. But the daughter is like 10 years younger than when the wall was built. So, but anyway, no written information. And for me, as anthropologist, it was interesting to know, is it possible to read something like a wall or any other artistic work without existing sources. So what I did was, when I was thinking how to read it, is that maybe I should start to read it from the left to the right, the same as we read the books. So when we read it in this way, we can see that on the left side we have inscription Bolnica, that means hospital, and this actually represents strong ties to local community. The connection between Maribor and the General Hospital, today's University Clinical Center, is still strong because many people still remember that people of Maribor helped build new hospital through community self-funding or samoprispevek. Uh, then, if we move to the right, we have a motif of five people carrying a patient on a stretcher. I think this symbolizes the hospital's accessibility and care, and it demonstrates commitment to comprehensive patient treatment. This image conveys that patients need not suffer at home or treat themselves, but instead they receive important protection in the hospital. So the next, if we move more to the right, we see the abstract the depiction of an operation theater with masked doctors, and I think this composition reflects advances in medical sterility and patient protection from disease transmission. So this highlights the important hygiene and safety standards crucial for effective healthcare delivery. Such central symbolism represents the hospital's commitment to medical advancement, development in its core mission. If we move more to the left, and this is the final hospital motive, we see a recovering patient in hospital setting, which for me symbolizes the successful fulfillment of hospital's purpose. So this image relates closely to the motive represents the patient's final recovery, symbolized by omega sign, um, the last letter of Greek alphabet, signifying that patient is returning to everyday life. Below appears the artist's signature Chobal, you can see it on the left below, as if conveying that his hospital narrative concludes here, and passing responsibility then to the physicians, symbolized on the far right by the rod of Asclepius with a snake, like in this picture. So this is how I actually see and read the picture. As you can see, the wall's color is light blue, and it gives artwork distinctive and coherent visual identity. This color actually has additional symbolic associations with health, tranquility, and trustworthiness. Time has taken also its toll, and you can see on the left side of the wall there are some missing tiles. They have been replaced with paint in approximately the same shade, but not the same. So I think that Chobal typically depicts figures in simplified form, and the individual motives appear rather static, despite portraying three different actions requiring some dynamism. The people appear in profile, um, and so profile without facial features, their clothing subtly suggesting hospital staff. So, nevertheless, these symbolic motifs combine medicine's rational efficiency with human elements, compassion, hospital acceptance, recovery, and also connection to the city of Maribor. The wall represents a meaningful dialogue between art and architecture. The artist approach integrates function with aesthetic and translates healthcare duality, so balancing professional efficiency with compassionate patient care. So to conclude, Chobal's wall at the Maribor University Clinical Center is a successful integration of art, medicine, and it still has a function in public space. I must say that after I published this reading in the journal, in the hospital's journal, a lot of people, and the hospital then shared this article on the Facebook. A lot of staff that worked in the hospital started to remember how they were actually posing in front of the wall as a representative space, and they still keep memories of this wall. Today, maybe the function of the wall is a little bit forgotten. Nobody is posing in front of it. But I must say that I visited Maribor's hospital many times because I had to take my parents there, and the hospital actually takes care that going towards the wall is beautifully decorated with flowers on both sides. So flowers are blue, and when you come to the street, you have to cross the street and then you come to this wall. So I think the hospital still pays attention to this monument through other mechanisms like plants they have in vicinity of this wall. Okay, I'm going to stop here with my reading, and it just an example how we can read something if we know much about the period, something about how hospital was built, so with money of people of Maribor. So I mean, not the whole hospital, but the highest part where is surgical, where surgical departments, uh, and um, and the position of such artwork in public space is then meaningful, even if we read it after so many decades. Thank you very much. I'm going to
Thank
stop
you.
sharing
Yeah.
now.
Thank you, Professor Ramshak. This wonderful introduction to our panel. We will move on. The next on the schedule are our colleagues from Poland. Um, who prepared the study on the dropout phenomena in humanities and technical studies. It will be based on the case study of Poland, but also comparison to other European Union countries. Magdalena Psiwisz-Stauska and Dawid Stauski both come from Łódź University. So here I see that we have David. The word is yours.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the organizer for giving me opportunity to be a part of your meeting and of this conference. It's a very interesting conference. And the idea of this presentation, the idea of this topic was that we wanted to compare the dropout phenomenon from different point of views. So because in Poland we have such situation that it's probably similar to other European countries, that it's easier to get to the technical study, but it's more difficult to finish the technical field of study. So we wanted to measure this, and we want to find out to compare those results from the European situation and confirm this initial assumption. So at the beginning, I would like to tell you about definition. Next, to show you some results, some statistic results which we obtain. Compare those results from the technical field of study and the humanistic field of study, and combine this with European level. And finally, I will go to the conclusion part. So firstly, it's a definition. So because we can define the dropout phenomenon in different ways. But for this presentation, we take a definition that the dropout is a number of students, is a percentage of students who were removed from the study and didn't know return in 12 months. So this is a dropout definition. So if you couldn't finish, the reasons of the dropout may be much different. So but generally, dropout is treated as a negative phenomenon because it's in the public financing system. It means that we will waste of the public money because it's a wasting of time of the student and wasting of public money. There is also some kind of positive side that the people, I mean students, can have a little more time to find its proper way in life. Okay, so first observation which we found from looking on the statistical data is that the dropout is more often for men. So men are more looking more about they are changing its way of life more often than women. It's 49% for men and only 34 for women. So it's an interesting difference from that point of view. But to give you a background, I would like to show you the results from last 8 years and from this period, from last 9 years. And from this period, you can see that the amount of public money, this is the only public money, dedicated for the higher education in Poland is continuously increasing. And it's, if you compare those, this is on the left side, you can see the results for the in the money, and on the right side you can see this as a percentage of GDP. So you can see that from all points of view it's strongly increasing. It's continuously increasing, but on the other hand, number of students in Poland is decreasing. So uh, also the size of population is decreasing a little. That's why on the left side you can see the general number of students. And on the right side, you can see it after recalculation per 100,000 inhabitants in the country. So from both points of view, this is decreasing. But if you, so that conclusion from the previous slides is that amount of public funds dedicated for one student is strongly increasing because we have increase in public money dedicated per higher education, and we have decreasing number of students. Even if you take into account the inflation, this is the right side, you can see that the higher education is quite expensive now. Number of students is decreasing, but the number of people with higher education diploma in Poland in last years is continuously increasing. It's not fast, but this increase is quite visible, and it's very close to the aim of the state. Aim of the state is to have a 50% of population with higher education. So we are going into this direction slowly, but it is going in this direction. And now I would like to show you the level of dropout in Poland in the same period. I mean the period 2012 and 2020, between those years, and the average is the 40%. So I think it's quite high. But it's even higher on the first degree, it's 46%. On the second degree, the people are older, and this is the shorter time dedicated for this period. So you can see that it's only 30%, and if you take into account the uniform master of study, it's only 41%. But the comparison between humanistic field of study and the technical sciences is quite similar, but we have a little bigger for humanities. So it's 47% and 45% in the technical sciences. So we expected different relations. So we expected that in technical sciences it will be much higher, and it's very close. But even it's a little more for humanistic field of study. If you compare it, the dropout level, taking into account the stage of study for the first, it's 55 for humanities and 51 for technical sciences. And for the second, you can see 36 for humanities and 32 for technical sciences. So the conclusion from these relationships is that it's a little more the dropout level in humanistic is a little higher than in technical sciences field of study, but generally it's quite similar, but a little higher for the humanistic field of study. What was for us really surprising? If you want to compare these results on the European level, you can see that the dropout after first year of studies in Poland about 19%, in European Union the average is 13%. So it means that in Poland it is higher. But if you can see the next row, you can see that the number of people which completing bachelor degree in the standard time is 53 in Poland, 43 in European Union average. So it's the direction of the process is changing here. So you can see that it's a little surprising. That's why I combine all of these results together. But when you see third row, we have a completing bachelor degree in 3 years, which is very similar. So finally, we are going to almost the same level. As I told you, in Poland, we have a full dropout on the level of 40%, but I couldn't find those data dedicated for whole European Union. So it was possible to obtain for some selective countries, but the European Statistics Board didn't show those results for European Union, or maybe I couldn't find it. We couldn't find it, and finally, I would like to show you uh, the comparison. I'm sorry, between the Polish and the European level of public expenses, calculated as a percent of GDP. And in Poland, we are here currently a little above the European average, but very close to European average, I would like to say. And of course, the topic what are the reasons for the dropout is quite it's probably very it should be discussed in different topic. I just wanted to mention some possible reasons like mismatch direction, unrealistic expectations, financial difficulties, sometimes stress is too high and studying maybe too difficult, mental health problems, lack of sense of belonging, some kind of procedural barriers because the university labyrinth is elaborated along. So it's maybe that's are the main problems, main reasons which I found. But I don't want to develop this list. In the last thing I wanted to mention that the study of the phenomenon of dropout at the University of Łódź is a dedicated, a special group which is working at this process. So to conclude, I would like to tell you that average level of dropout phenomenon in Poland is quite high, and this means it's about 40%. We have no significant differences between humanities and technical sciences, and even a little more for humanistic we could find out. But the dropout is a common phenomenon. It is occurring in all European countries, and it's determined a lot of different factors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Stawski. Excellent. We should move on to our next speaker. I see that we have here our colleague from Croatian University, Miroslav Reiter. He will present the crucial topic of for all of us of social capital of PhD holders. And I should also mention that he prepared the study together with Valentina Pavlovic Vinogradac, and that Miroslav Reiter is is professor at the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Law. Professor Reiter, the word is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I will try to be quick as I can. But first of all, I would like to show you show you the idea behind the complete PhD study. I was a mentor of my colleague Valentina, and we tried to build a study on academic perception of success and what are the predictors of successful academics, at least how they perceive themselves. And one of the predictors we had was their early and late social capital, which can be perceived as structural capital, like who knows whom, how big is your network size and density, the nature of this connection, how is your trust towards your colleagues, your friends, your surroundings, and cognitive, how do you find your values align with your colleagues and other people? Because in academia, everything is around social networks, and this is something that is quite important if you try to build a career. And what motivated me to go into this field, and this is one of the slides that usually make people in academia panic. These are the roles of scientists that are expected of scientists during their career, and this slide shows only the scientific part and not the teaching part. So we have many roles, and to be successful in these roles, we need to first to prioritize, to have we cannot do everything, and secondly, you need to have a lot of help. You need to have a lot of people around you to help you build your career. So we define social capital as a resource, as a prerequisite for scientific productivity and access to funding. The literature says also that high rank brings broader, more cosmopolitan international networks, but while early career researchers rely more on their local networks, and that women often build smaller, tight-knit networks, while men develop broader but looser networks, shallower. And there is a traditional assumption that family is an obstacle in the development of academic career, which is something that is highly prevalent in European talk and the issues in European Union, how to build a good and flexible academic community. So this part of the studies we are presenting now are some correlates of social economic status and family status, like scientific field, gender, marital status, parenthood, and grandparent status, which is important because every mentor had a mentor, and my mentor forced me to include grandparent status in this study. It was quite important for her to analyze this. So we did empirical study, quantitative, with around 400 PhD holders from Croatian universities during 2023. And the average age was 45 years, with a slightly higher percentage of female scientists. Around Croatian universities, we have more women than men in early career researchers and academics, and a bit more men than women in late stages of academic development. Most of them were from University of Zagreb, 38%, and University of Rijeka. University of Zagreb holds around 50% of total academics in Croatia. Um, we developed our own instrument because we couldn't find the instrument that measures social capital, at least not the current instrument. And one of the key flaws of the study was that the issue of social capital in sociology and psychology is highly controversial, and many definitions, many theoretical models, and it's really hard to grasp as a concept. But what we had is that when you measure the social capital of, for example, items in this question was, do you know somebody who is a medical doctor, who is a school teacher, who is an owner of a company, a lawyer, a media personality, your participation in public life, for example, NGOs or companies or public institution, a church, etc. So what we get is that the sex doesn't have any don't have any differences related to sex. You can remember that older studies thought that women have smaller networks. Now we don't share these results. Scientific field has some differences, with social sciences exhibit highest level of social capital compared to natural and technical sciences. Other differences were not significant. So social sciences have bigger networks. And the academic rank was a significant predictors that postdoctoral researchers have significantly lower social capital compared to assistant and full professors, probably due to their focus on their work within the institution and on their publications. Regarding the family sphere, marital status didn't show significant differences. Age showed some correlation that older people have a better social capital, but not as much as we could expect. But one of the things that was very nice to see is that number of children is related to social capital. So parenthood, people who are parents have higher social capital, and this can be interpreted as that they develop networks in kindergartens or school with their parents, so they have additional sources of people in their surrounding. Grandparent status had no significant effect, so my mentor was wrong. Um, Okay. So, the social sciences usually rely on more broader, more diverse, and externally oriented network, while people in STEM are more oriented toward working in laboratories, and they have this culture of lab work, and building a laboratory as a homogeneous unit. So, and another thing is that we have a career, we found a career bottleneck in postdoctoral researchers, and which is quite important because the transition from postdoctoral student to assistant professor usually depends on your social networks and how you build your social capitals around Europe, because this is where the mobility happens. These are results from Croatia, so we don't have much mobility, but for in European context, this mobility becomes higher. The other thing is rethinking the traditional view that family obligation hinder academic networking. This was important because we currently in Croatia we have a lack of people willing to work in academia because the salaries are quite low and it's not competitive compared to private companies. So academia is finally rethinking the mental well-being and life well-being of employees, and this is one of the important things. How will we develop the private, personal, and professional balance for our academics and researchers? So in future research directions, we should build more qualitative studies because this is what opened for us in our studies that the researchers are talking a lot about their mental health crisis, about depression, about anxiety, about feeling of constant pressure, imposter syndrome, feeling not good enough, which is quite important because it generally you have the career which is one of the highest prestigious careers you can have, and on the other hand, you sacrifice your mental health for the career advancement. And what I would like to conclude is again with this slide is what to really think about what we are doing when we are doing academia, and how to better develop the workplace to be more inclusive and more supportive for all stages of career. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Reiter, for presenting your fascinating study. The next speaker is also with us, uh, Andrew Williams from Baltic University LLC International University will advocate for social movement. The word is yours, Andrew.
All right, so we're all seeing, are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. What do I need to do to accept screen share? Do you know?
At the bottom of your page,
Okay, got it
yeah.
right there. Okay. All right.
Now
Okay, great. Thank
okay.
you. Yeah. Thank you for Luca for hosting this, and to the Alma Mater University for putting this together, and for all the participants here. I'm a little geographically oriented, so I think of Slovenia. I visited at one time, and gosh, what a beautiful, beautiful country. And then David earlier on our panel here from Poland, being that Lithuania is a border nation, I've been to Poland a number of times and had wonderful visits there. So I'm in Lithuania at LCC International University, and I work on in an interdisciplinary space. I'm on the political science and theology faculties. And so just a couple quick plugs that kind of relate to interdisciplinarity. We do have a new MA in International Institution NGO Leadership. That's social science-y, interdisciplinary. And maybe more importantly for this group, certainly more importantly probably, we've started a journal a few years back called Philanthropia, that's civil society nonprofity stuff, but from the perspectives of the disciplines of the humanities. So would love to talk to anyone who has interest in that, but let's get on. So this research is really kind of a practical piece of looking, how does humanities potentially impact our life today? And so I looked back at a famous case of a social movement, abolition of the slave trade, and just wanted to tease out a few of the tactics used there. I think it's really helpful for students. It could even be helpful for social movement practitioners. So that's kind of the genesis of this paper. I have a few key moments here in British abolition. It's a little bit of a busy slide. Apologize for that. So slavery itself was made illegal in 1772 in England. The famous Society for the Effecting of the Abolition of the Slave Trade started in 1787, and 20 years later, the slave trade, the transatlantic trade, was banned, and then another about 25 years later, slavery itself was prohibited within the United Kingdom. Recently, we had a guest here at LCC, the president of the Mennonite Economic Development Association, speaking, the woman on the left there, Dorothy Nyambi. And she made the comment that the biggest thing that someone asked her, what makes change in the world? And there's probably lots of good answers, but she said the biggest thing that produces change is communication. And I think that's key to the abolitionist movement, and at least what I want to highlight in it. So if communication is really important, one of the things, the starting points is the perception that existed at the time. And so easy for us to forget sometimes, maybe, or even to fully comprehend how much slavery was the historical norm, right? So a famous historian of slavery, Seymour Drescher, writes that freedom, not slavery, was the peculiar institution, right? So freedom was the unusual thing, not slavery in the 18th century. One example of that, the Vermont Bill of Rights of 1777, the terms servant, slave, apprentice, and bounded as in, a bond servant, were all used to describe servitude. So this idea of what slavery meant and its historical almost inevitability or the volume of it were perceptual problems that abolitionists had to conquer. How did they conquer that? Is the question. And one of the ways to think about that is what terminology needed clarifying, right? What was slavery in the late 18th century and in the transatlantic world that might have been different from other times and other places, or similar to other times and other places, but still needed highlighting. And when I think about today, we could ask that same question. What terms need continued clarity today? So terms like genocide, right, that are banned, that need highlighting and need rigorous assertion of what they are, because some people try to equivocate, or nationalism or neo-imperialism or liberty or democracy or corruption, et cetera, et cetera. So that idea of the terminology needs clarification, I think, is similar in abolition as it is today and in many other times. All right, so how did abolitionists go about bringing clarity to what was happening? One of the main ways was giving witness, just firsthand testimony. Here is one of the more famous abolitionists, Olaudah Equiano, born in modern-day Nigeria, kidnapped into slavery at an early age, purchased his freedom later, and became a prominent abolitionist, wrote this interesting narrative of the life of Olaudah Equiano. And that was a shocking, jarring, firsthand account of the separation of families, of the rape and sexual predation of slaves on board, the terrible living conditions, the constant death, the desire for suicide for many slaves on board, et cetera. So shocking to the 18th century mind. In terms of clear, so that firsthand witness was very clarifying. But then there were some terms, and other than just slavery, that were clarified or that were brought to the fore that helped people see what was happening. One was just simply the term murder in a criminal case. So there was a famous case in 1781. I don't have time to go into it, but the civil trial didn't use the word murder at all. It used death. And then in the criminal trial that was brought, a famous abolitionist, Granville Sharp, introduced the term murder and brought suit on that legal ground. Now, they lost the case, predictably, but introducing that sort of language was important to establishing the moral and legal claim going forward. Other ways that terminology was clarified. So Equiano, the person we just talked about above, he talked about nominal Christianity, right? Like throwing back into this highly religious society their own religion, right? Or terms like merciless and savage that would have been expected to be used of non-Britons were used of Britons. Other firsthand testimony was key to the movement. There's 5 examples there. One of the most famous is John Newton, the author of the hymn Amazing Grace, who had been a slave trader. That's the 4th one there. And then had a conversion experience and became an abolitionist. He wrote Thoughts Upon the Slave Trade based on his firsthand experience. In addition to firsthand experience written, it was important to have visual evidence. So Thomas Clarkson, who wrote a thesis and won an award for it on an abolitionist thesis at Cambridge, he was criticized by some as not having any real firsthand experience or visual experience of the slave trade. And so that was there was this theme of, well, you don't really know what you're talking about, or you don't, show us. In addition to that, the literacy rates in the UK were not high, approximately 60% for men, approximately 40% for women at the time. So non-textual evidence was needed. And of course, there's the general power of imagery in any time and place. And so one historian talks about the icons of suffering and injustice, which I think is a good way to think about it. One of those famous icons, probably all of us have seen this at one time or another, an actual diagram of the slave ship, the Brooks. and it could hold 609 enslaved individuals. And you see somewhat of a layout of it there. And they on this diagram, they would often give the dimensions of how much space each enslaved individual had, a very small amount of space. So 1.8 meters by 0.4 meters for men. Actually, I should have. There's a little bit of a error there in the meters, but you see the feet as well. So a very small amount of space. Sorry for the typo. Um, Other visual appeals included the famous Wedgwood medallion. It was made into medallions, necklaces, wall hangings, etc. Some abolitionists would take literal chains and shackles to meetings to speak on the travesty of the slave trade. Some abolitionists would take people to empty slave ships in the harbors in the UK, Bristol and Manchester and others. And then formerly enslaved individuals themselves were quite powerful visual evidence of the trade, right? It was hard to undermine their testimony because they were there in person. And then another tactic that was really important was to bring the argument home. So this is, of course, a human characteristic. Okay, maybe I don't believe fully, or I don't comprehend fully, or I doubt the deprivation that's happening to these enslaved individuals. But if you start talking about my own people and what's happening, then I get more concerned. So remarkably, historians believe or conclude that more British sailors died as a percentage on slave trading voyages than enslaved Africans because of lack of immunity to tropical diseases. But approximately 18% of British sailors died. Well, that'll get your attention in the 18th century, especially when population and maritime power are important to national security. Spiritual degradation of British sailors. That's a quote there. I won't read it, but talking about the British sailors' sexual predation, rape of enslaved women, that was shocking to the modern sensibilities, of course, in that time, that their own compatriots could do these sorts of things. Along those lines, highlighting the moral and religious dimension. If this Wedgwood medallion here, we can really quickly read past "I am not a man and a brother." I am not, it's gendered language, but I am not a human. I am not a brother or sister. So that's appealing to common human dignity, man, and then appealing to probably Christian solidarity, brother, and it would be sister if we weren't gendered in the 18th century. So the moral and religious dimension is also part of bringing it home. And then the famous boycotts and petitions and things like that. So I end with just, it's kind of a question. What are some of the tactics they use? And I think it's just best as four questions, and there could be other questions or different ways of stating them. What issues and terms need clarity today, like slavery or murder in the 18th century? Whose voices, what testimony, right? It was powerful then to have formerly enslaved individuals and prominent British people. Number three, what visual evidence or media are needed today, like there were various types then. And then how do we bring issues home, right? What are the ways that if a populace doesn't really understand the immoral injustice in a faraway land, how can we bring those home? So that's the paper. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Andrew, for presenting this striking historical overview. For conclusion of this panel, I invite our colleague Moitza Sfilgoy, who has been involved in the preservation of cultural heritage for many years, both academically and professionally. So today she will present a part of her work. Please, Moitza.
Thank you. You see the image of
Yeah.
presentation. Yeah, thank you. I will present endangered rural built heritage and public participation. In Slovenia, the involvement of local communities and development of management of cultural heritage is gradually strengthening within the framework of modern approaches to heritage protection, which emphasize the importance of participation, interdisciplinary cooperation, and sustainable development. The traditional model of cultural heritage protection, which was based primarily on expert assessment and institutional supervision, is gradually being supplemented by approaches that recognize the important role of residents as barriers of knowledge, memory, and identity of the space. In recent years, participatory approaches have also been increasingly used in museums and researchers practitioners, where residents are involved in collecting stories, documenting local traditions, and co-creating exhibitions and interpretation programs. Such practices strengthen the sense of shared ownership of heritage and promote the understanding of heritage as a social process that goes beyond the mere material protection of objects. Despite positive developments, researchers warn that public participation is often limited to consultative level, with key decisions of spatial interventions and heritage managements still largely on domain the institutional actors. Therefore, an important challenge is the need for earlier and more systematic involvement of local communities and decision-making process. Such an approach in the line with the principle of Faro Conventions, which emphasize the right of communities to participate in the heritage management and understands heritage as an important factor of social development and democratic participation. In the following, I will present the Council of Europe Framework Convention of the Value of Cultural Heritage for Society as a key document. I present the convention in the part that concerns the right to cultural heritage as a part of the right to participate in cultural life and the right to share responsibility for cultural heritage and public participation. Sorry. If I just highlight some of them, rights relating to cultural heritage are inherent to right to participate in cultural life, individual and collective responsibility towards cultural heritage, greater synergy and competence among the public, institutional, and private sector concerned, shared responsibility for cultural heritage and public participation, promote and integrate the well-informed approaches by public authorities and in all sectors and all levels, develop the legal, financial, and professional frameworks which makes possible joint action by public authorities, experts, owners, investors, businesses, non-governmental organizations, and civil society. Innovative ways to public authorities to cooperate with other actors, respect and encourages voluntary initiatives with complement the roles of the public authorities, encourage non-governmental organizations considered with heritage conservation to act the public interest. Below, I will present two recent examples of high-profile examples of social initiatives for the presentation of endangered architectural heritage in rural areas. The first example is the old house at Gasilska ulica 4 in Pjava Gorica, which represents an important element of local historical and architectural heritage The villagers addressed the public letter to the municipality, which discussed the planned spatial inventions in the settlements of Piava Gorica from the perspective of the protection of local architectural heritage and the participation of residents in decision-making about spatial development. The central example is the house at the Gasilska 4, which, according to the authors, is approximately 150 years old and has performed several important social functions through history. The building has been an important part of local social life in the spatial of the symbolic core of the settlement for many decades. The proposed demolition of the house linked to plans for traffic reorganization and the development of the village center is presented in the letter as an example of endangering rural architectural heritage, which could be preserved and included in modern development programs, for example, in a local tourism project, community activities, and cultural interpretation of the space. The authors of the letter points out that the similar buildings could be renovated and given new content with appropriate support from the municipality, civil society, and the tender mechanism, instead of being removed from the spatial and the historical context of the space. In this sense, demolition does not only mean the loss of the individual building, but also the reduction of the material carriers of the collective memory and the identity of the local community. An important part of the letter is also devoted to the issue of public participation in spatial decision-making. The author critically highlights the lack of transparency and timely involvement of the residents in planning process, as key decisions of the spatial interventions are often made before public presentation. In their opinion, such an approach reduces the possibility for open discussion of alternative solution and limits the democratic character of the local spatial management. Current status for this object on 11th of December 2025, the major received those documents from the civil initiative, but the house was demolished in the end of December 2025. So the next example is Pregant House. Pregant House is one of the oldest multi-apartment workers buildings in Slovenia. It was built before 1840 as a housing facility for workers at the Prevalje Iron Works, which was an important industrial center in the 19th century. The preservation of Pregant House workers building in Prevalje has become an important example of the debate of the protection of industrial and social heritage in the context of natural disasters, safety issues, and the local spatial development in recent years. The issue of the preserving the building became particularly acute after the floods in 2023, when the major river caused extensive damage to the building and in the wider area of the settlement. Due to the damage and flood risk, initiatives have emerged to remove the building, mainly from the perspective of the safety of the residents and rehabilitation of the area. At the same time, some experts warned that demolition would mean the loss of the important element of the industrial heritage. Institutions associated with heritage protection have therefore joined the discussion, including the Institute for the Protection of the Cultural Heritage of Slovenia, which has begun to assess the heritage value of the building and the possibilities for its protection. Various proposals for the further consideration of the building have emerged in expert discussion. These include the possibility of partial of the complete renovation and adaptation of the building to new cultural and function and inclusion of the building in the broader concept of preserving the industrial heritage of the Mežica Valley. Such approaches emphasize the importance of reusing historic buildings and their integration into the development of the local community. The civil initiatives to preserve the pregnant house was created in response to the planned demolition after the 2023. It involved local residents, cultural preservation, and museum experts through initiatives, arguments about the heritage value, and the media discussion. Achieved that the process of accessing the building cultural significance was initiated. The process is not yet complete, but it's taking place in several professional and administrative steps. So to conclude, both cases highlight the broader problem of heritage management at the local level, the conflict between development interests, securely the infrastructure needs, and the preservation of material carrier of the collective memory. At the same time, they emphasize the importance of earlier public involvement in decision-making process. Both cases illustrate the sustainable heritage management depends on balancing professional judgment, developing strategies, and the active participation of the local community.
Thank you, Moisa. This concludes the panel 44 on the humanities. I want to thank all the excellent speakers, and I would like to invite all the audience to continue following our conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
We can now start the panel number 45. And of course, this is the panel that will bring together some very interesting, in many cases, young researchers from the field of humanities, especially in terms which will have their papers basically or especially in regards to the digitalization, the question of digitalization, the questions of geopolitics also, and of course these are all fields which in a way are critical in today's society, because of course we are living in the time of immense tensions. We are living in the time when warfare has become again the daily news, where of course the old safety nets are basically being teared to shreds. They are being ripped apart by the forces, which of course, especially here in Europe, we can't really yet fully understand and especially not control. And of course, with the dangers now not coming just from the east or from global south, or where we fought in the past, of course, our colonization affected past. Well, they are now coming from all the sides of the global sphere. So the thing is that we need to rethink our position in the world, and I'm glad that today's guests, that today's speakers will are of the material to be able, and the caliber to be able to think on or to reflect on that on a high level. So we will start immediately with the talk. Now, first, I will excuse Uroš Zavodnik, who already sent me the letter in which he stated that he, unfortunately, due to the necessary obligations, will not be present today. So, with this excuse, we will now continue with our next speaker, which is Marcel Nilai, a PhD, a lecturer from the University of Shkodër, Luigi Guracucci. Now, is Marcel here? Let's see, I don't see him. So let's then continue to the next speaker. There will be more time for the others. Then I'm not unhappy with that. how this turned out to be. Okay, so the next speaker is Valdrina Selimi, a PhD candidate from the University of Pech. Is Valdrina here?
Hi, yes.
Oh,
Hello.
Valdrina. Now, Valdrina will present us the paper, which I do think is much like in the line with what we just said, very actual, very relevant today, and it's called From Brain Drain to Digital Gain, Exploring Outsourcing as an Alternative. Valdrina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just 1 second. Okay, as I was working on my paper, I hope it's okay. The title had a slight change. I hope it's okay, but it is the same material, so the same research and everything. Okay. Can you see slides?
Well, I see just fine.
We see them, yes.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. My name is Valdrina Selimi, and today I will be presenting my research titled Stability Without Retention: The Limits of Cross-Border Digital Labor as a Strategy Against Brain Drain. So this study examines whether the participation in cross-border digital work, which is often promoted as a solution to immigration, actually reduces people's intentions to leave their home countries. The research focuses on, North Macedonia and Kosovo, two countries where migration has long been a major social economic challenge. So immigration is one of the most pressing, background. Okay. So, immigration is you could say is one of the most pressing issues in many developing and, in many developing and transition economies. In recent years, governments and development organizations have increasingly promoted cross-border digital labor as a potential solution. Through digital platforms, if I can take a moment and explain cross-border digital labors, this is through digital platforms and remote works. This is actually where the individuals, through digital platforms and remote work, can provide services to international clients while remaining in their home countries. The assumption behind the idea is quite simple. If people can earn international incomes without immigrating, they may be less likely to leave. So this is all great, but immigration, as we know it, immigration decisions are rarely that straightforward. This study actually therefore examines whether digital labor actually functions as a retention mechanism or whether the relationship is more complex. Many policy decisions assume that a linear relationship, digital employment, increased income, and a higher income therefore reduces migration. But migration decisions are multidimensional. Economic opportunities are only one factor among many. People may still choose to migrate due to dissatisfaction with the governance, weak public services, healthcare limitations, or even a broader quality of life concern. So the key question here becomes, does improving income alone reduce migration intentions? And this research addresses the gap between policy assumption and actual behavior. Okay. So the primary objective of the study is to examine whether participation in cross-border digital labor reduces immigration tensions. By analyzing these variables together, the study aims to provide a more nuanced understanding of whether this can truly function as a policy tool against brain drain. The research focuses on North Macedonia and Kosovo, two Western Balkan countries characterized by high immigration rates. These countries share several important characteristics. First and foremost, they experience significant youth immigration, particularly among highly educated individuals. Secondly, domestic labor markets often offer limited opportunities and relatively low wages. And at the same time, the region has experienced rapid growth in digital outsourcing and remote work. This combination makes the region sort of like the ideal context for studying whether digital labor can realistically counter the migration pressure. So the study is based on an original survey data collected in 2025, last year. The data set includes 554 responders from North Macedonia and Kosovo. The questionnaire collects information on several key dimensions, and this data sets allows us to examine both the economic and non-economic determinants of migration decisions. To analyze the relationship between the variables, the study employs the structural equation modeling, or SEM. SEM is particularly useful because migration decisions are influenced by multiple interconnected factors. So the method allows us to examine direct effect and indirect effect and the overall structure of the relationship between the variables. So the key findings reveal several important insights. First, participating in cross-border digital labor significantly increases the perceived economic stability. In other words, individuals engaged in digital work tend to feel more financially secure. So, however, additional economic stability does not significantly reduce the immigration intentions. Additionally, digital labor itself does not have a direct effect on migration intentions. So this suggests that while digital work can improve economic conditions, it does not necessarily change a broader migration decision. The stronger prediction. So the analysis shows that the strongest prediction of migration intentions is dissatisfaction with non-economic quality of life factors. These include concerns related to governance and institutional quality, healthcare system, the public services, and a broader society conditions. So these factors appear to outweigh improvement in income. So even when individuals experience greater financial stability through digital work, dissatisfaction with institutional conditions continues to drive migration intentions. They outweigh the money in this case. The role of social relationships. The study also examined the role of social relationships, including family and community ties. As most of us know, that is a very strong, people in our community have strong ties to their community. So while these conditions do influence migration decision, their effect is relatively weak and only marginally significant in the model. This suggests that although social ties may encourage people to stay, they're often not strong enough to counterbalance broader institutional dissatisfaction. So policy implications, these findings carry important policy implications. Many governments are investing heavily in digital employment initiatives, assuming they will reduce the brain drain. However, the results suggest that digital labor alone is not sufficient. While it can improve economic stability, it does not address the deeper concern related to governance, public services, and the overall quality of life. Policies aimed to reducing migration must therefore go beyond labor market solutions and focus on a broader institutional improvement. To conclude, cross-border digital labor successfully improves income and economic stability, but it does not significantly reduce migration tensions. In other words, digital labor may create an economic stability without talent retention, which we're looking for. Addressing brain drain, therefore, requires structural reforms, particularly improvements in the governance, public institutions, and quality of life. Only by addressing these broader conditions can countries create environments that genuinely encourage people to stay. Thank you very much for your attention and your time.
Thank you, Valdrina, for this very concise, relatively quick, I think very relevant discussion paper. So I am now opening the field for the discussion. Feel free to ask Valdrina any question you desire. I think the topic is, despite we may not, we may not talk about migration that much in the face of Trumpism and all the changes and that has been going on. It's been a relevant topic for a long time right now, and it will continue to be, especially given the conditions in the Near East right now, and of course Central Asia and so on. So the thing is that we may, or this will be the topic that will continue to be raised from time to time. And I think that this, especially the question of digital solutions to migration, is maybe one thing that we in humanities rarely acknowledge, or at least for now, we don't yet ethically and so politically or sociologically assess. So I think, Vedrina, you did really solid work of showcasing us this important topic. Now, I will ask now our guests, our audience, is there perhaps any question for Valdrina? Until usually, especially when the topic is relevant but relatively new, it takes some time for the first questions to pop up. So I will ask you, Valdrina. So I didn't quite hear quite exactly. So where did you base your empirical studies on? Do you have one very specific area? Do you think, of course, that this because I think this issue is or can be quite region based. I think you talked in a really generalized sense. But I think that there may be a lot of differences between regions, where this could go on. Obviously, for example, that if you come from Southeastern Europe, you have different infrastructure, different to say situation at home, different economic framework and so on. Then if you come from, of course, war-ridden countries such as Syria and so on. So, where did you base your research on? And can you tell me about these differences?
Yeah. As I actually mentioned a bit, but very briefly, I was under the impression that the presentation is from 8 to 10 minutes, so I tried to eliminate many of my things. The research actually focused in North Macedonia and Kosovo, which are two of the Western Balkan countries characterized with high immigration rates. I did this mainly because I know the area. I am from North Macedonia and I have lived in Kosovo for over 14 years now, and I have seen the changes within especially these 5 years or so, where a large percentage of especially the youth are working with international companies to sort of have an, let's say, above average income, but still choose to migrate. Very few of them still remain. And my curiosity was why, since you're making a very pretty high income, why do you not use that in the country that you're in, where you would have a much higher, let's say, quality of life with the money that you do receive? But it turns out that that is not the only issue. Financial stability is not the only issue, which says a lot about our governments in general in Kosovo and especially in North Macedonia now. Um, I'm one of those people who has actually uh, sort of emigrated to another country, sort of saying it was mainly due to my job. Any other questions?
I think that obviously it's become obvious that just economic improvements cannot really or are not the only factor in improving one's quality of life, especially if the country is still developing. And I think this is a key topic here. And of course, this fine line between brain drain or attempting to stop the brain drain on the other hand, and on the other hand, improving the quality of life for everyone is, of course, sometimes something that is in this neoliberal world sometimes difficult. Because of course it's not just enough to bring people to some region with or some country with the higher pay, but also of course you need to look for infrastructure that will benefit most. So the fine line. Thank you. Is there any other question for Vadrina and her presentation? Urosh, please.
Well, thank you. I just have an interesting comment talking about brain drain. I think, if we're all in the EU, it's not really brain drain. It's like moving from Skopje to, another city, like moving from Belgrade to Novi Sad, or moving from Peć to Budapest. If we're all in the EU, I guess it's not really brain drain. I'm kind of optimistic about all of us joining the EU, thinking about it like that.
Yeah, I could say you can say that, but also you do know that we are in desperate need of medical services. Like we have most of our doctors and IT services that have moved abroad lately, and Macedonia especially is concerned about this. We for the past, not even now, it's been at least for the past 5 to 10 years, and more people are preparing themselves to leave as well by uh, getting these German certificates and everything. And even though we would like to say that we're part of Europe, uh,
It's a difficult question.
Europe says otherwise.
We
EU
have
says
the same
otherwise.
problem. If I can just comment, all of our
Yeah,
doctors from Serbia are going to Germany. They're all in Bavaria.
yeah, yeah.
Sad.
So are most of Macedonians actually. Whoever can actually in this at this point.
Yeah.
I have two of my own brothers who are in IT and moved to the Netherlands and Germany due to, as we say, the brain drain. Um,
But it's really, you made me think about this problem, because we just had a panel recently about the depopulation of the Balkans. I think Albania lost like 400,000 people in 10 years, Serbia about 500,000. I think Kosovo, they told me like there may be 1.5 million people living in Kosovo max. And
yeah,
Bosnia, it's even worse. So yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Problem.
yes, and institution keep on, I guess, suggesting these policies for the stay of what they call their highly skilled workers, but it's not working. So I just wanted to study on that. Why not?
It's a good study, if I can just add.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I think we will stop here. It is a really important topic, I think, and of course, because many of you, us, is here from Western Balkans or of the countries who have a lot of affiliation to it. Of course, this is an important topic, and of course, it's something that it is also represents a challenge that we will need to tackle in future, or at least we are hopefully already tackling it right now. Thank you, Valdrina. This presentation was excellent. We may still return to it because I think we will still have a little bit of time to the end, at the end for a short question or two. But right now, let's continue with the program. The next speaker is, a colleague that's been here. I think that he's returning now for at least a time. I remember Uroš Popadic, so he's already familiar of the conference. Uroš Popadic is a PhD candidate representing European movement in Serbia, and today's topic of his will be intergenerational justice and youth climate movements. Uroš, you have around 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pearce. I'll try to be brief enough to have a conversation and questions. Yes, it's my third time repeating, but I haven't seen Professor Toplak in a year. I hope he's fine. But yes, I didn't make it to Slovenia this time as well because I'm traveling all the time. But next year, when I make it the fourth appearance, I hope to be in Slovenia. I think the best part of Yugoslavia, as I always say. We're still sad to have a border with Slovenia, if I can say. So guys, and we're trying to be Slovenia in 10 years. I think that's something we can all aspire to. So why am I writing about climate justice and social justice? This is a paper I've been developing for a while. I did it with a friend, then my friend gave up because Trump became president, but I'm still trying to be optimistic about the climate. Even now we're actually I work at the European movement, of course, my PhD, I'm doing it at the University of Belgrade, but the European movement, the oldest NGO actually in the Western Balkans, that's still operational from 1992. We're doing a simulation of EU institutions, like a trilogue, like a model EU, and the agenda we're actually doing is connected to CO2 emissions and the EU Green Deal. So we're still working hard, both in practice and in theory, talking about climate change and climate justice. So what is the point of my paper? So the phenomenon of youth climate activism has become a defining feature of the political landscape. So we have media discourse, academic literature, political discussions with a lot of eco-anxiety, emotional responses to an uncertain future, and people are mobilizing on generational lines as well. The person who inspired me to even write about this and think about this, which actually is not within my specific field of expertise itself, it's the Fridays for Future, Greta Thunberg. She made me think, of course, she's sometimes annoying, of course, but she has a good heart, and I think we should all think more about the footprint we're leaving behind us. In the meanwhile, I sold my car, I just travel by tram and by train, trying to be carbon neutral. I became even a vegetarian to be more carbon neutral, I guess, which I guess most people aren't really following, but still young people are in many ways becoming more eco-conscious than previously. So what did I think about this? We look at the young people and think they're just protesting, they're just angry. Young people protest about everything. If you followed the news in Serbia, we had protests for over a year about rule of law. When a train station collapsed, killing 16 people, it still hasn't been resolved. But I don't think young people just protest. I think they're just unhappy because they have to spend the rest of their lives in our societies. It's easy to be pessimistic if you're 70, you won't live to see the ice caps melting. We keep doing this. So I wanted to understand this activism through the structural challenges of climate mitigation and adaptation. So I looked at Robinson, Shine, and Gardiner, and I think the fundamental challenge for contemporary states is decoupling the development from fossil fuel dependency. I just listened to Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, this morning, and I won't comment on him. I'm getting Hungarian citizenship this year. I don't think I'll be voting for him exactly in time, but he has made an interesting point. He has said that Hungary cannot depend on fossil fuel, not because of ecological reasons primarily, but because of structural reasons. It has no access to the sea, it depends on Russian oil, and he wants to make Hungary 70% nuclear energy, 30% solar energy, which makes it energy independent. I don't know what your thoughts are on nuclear energy. Young people don't really talk about it so much. But green energy, climate energy, you'll be surprised to know that Hungary is at the forefront when it comes to globally countries who are investing into green energy, something which I found quite interesting. You have two ways to deal with climate changes: to mitigate the costs associated with abandoning pollution and to adapt to development without it. This is something that young people are actually disappointed with. If you remember in 2015, the Paris Agreement, it tried to codify a norm of global ecological solidarity and even acknowledged how developing nations are vulnerable. I remember the concept of equitable access to sustainable development. However, there's a big gap between declarative stances and policy implementation. I noticed in the empirical section of my research that young people are actually very open to solidarity with the rest of the world, the global south. I remember my professor of peace studies at my PhD in Belgrade said that Serbia is a third world country, you know, like a global south country. It's a debate we're still having. I don't think it's exactly like that. But when you look at the world, the Western world has really prospered from fossil fuel and the rest of the world hasn't. And now we're asking them to stop using it. And this is something young people see. And that's why I had this theoretical connection. It's that climate justice is a kind of social justice. So it's about redistribution, it's about solidarity, but climate related and at a global level. But I also added the level of intergenerational, because when you look at it, you can say Western countries polluted the world, global South countries didn't have the chance. But it's also older people polluted the world, younger people didn't. So if you're 15 or 20 years old and you look at the world and they tell you you have to mitigate, you have to adapt, you have to clean up the world, you think, well, I didn't do anything to cause this, to deserve this. So this is a kind of social justice aimed intergenerationally through climate justice. So why do young people have to pick up the slack from the older generations? I think this is where a lot of the anger is coming from when you look at actually the discourse of the youth organizations. It's a kind of relative deprivation even. It's an old concept, even Tyler talked about it in 2003. Amartya Sen talked about it. It goes all the way back to Rawls in some ways in its theory of justice. So young people look at their lives. They look at the ecological instability, resource scarcity, economic volatility, and they look at the stability and resource intensity enjoyed by previous generations. So it's a kind of unearned disadvantage. I remember in the American elections, they talked about how this year actually, in these years, young people will live worse than their parents did for the first time in something like 70 years. Like after World War II, we had this upsurge in living standards. Now, this generation of young people, and I kind of like to think of myself as a young person, even though I'm in my 30s now, will live worse than their parents. So our living standards are going down, and it's a constant problem at every level. You know, we have to live with lower living standards, or we won't get to live very well at all because of climate change. And there's a lot of climate change denialism, a lot of climate change skepticism, but one thing's certain, it's that the world is heating up. I won't get into the climate science. I'm not a climate scientist, but I've been convinced through the science that things are getting worse. Not as catastrophically worse, but worse. But young people really have an emotional response to this. I think there's been a lot of exaggeration over how deep we're in trouble when it comes to climate change. I don't think we're going to die tomorrow, but young people are afraid and have a reason to be afraid. I mean, if you're 20, you're thinking about having children in this world, you know, you have to do something. It's a kind of human right to have, you know, food security, water security, but instead you have forced migration across the world. You know, we talked about digital migration in the previous paper, and I'm thinking, you know, a lot of people are moving from countries where climate change has really undermined the viability of living normally. And I think it's only going to get worse. I'm about to publish a paper in Političke Perspektive. It's a journal by the University of Zagreb, the University of Belgrade, where I wrote about climate security. Actually, this came out of my work in climate security. I'm a security and peace researcher. And there is a lot of talk at the global level that large amounts of migration are going to happen from the global south to the global north as warmer countries heat up even more. And this is a security problem, obviously. So Gonzalez, Rico, and Ray have this interesting idea in one of their papers that the ultimate marginalized group are future generations because they're yet to be born, and they're young and they're 15 and they're, children. Children have no presence in the halls of power, but their entire existence is shaped by current policies. So in my paper, I try to argue that young people have a moral weight. They are messengers of the future in some way, and their moral weight derives from the fact that they will live with the consequences of current political inertia. So what can they do about it? So they have activism as a practice of justice. If you integrate the pillar of social justice, which is a kind of justice based on redistribution, solidarity, and equality, climate justice, which basically is related to the fact that you're not allowed to pollute the planet for your own economic benefit to the disadvantage of other people, and intergenerational justice, that you need to leave a world in better shape than you found it for your children, which I think should be a kind of basic moral requirement. Don't leave things worse off than you found them. This is something that I guess is even in the Bible, probably. But the world today is filthier. I mean, it's economically more developed, sure, but just like we said in the previous discussion with your colleague from Patch, it's not just money when it comes to migration. You don't migrate just for money. You migrate for a better life. And we do have more money now, but what is that doing to our environment? How will we live in the future, really? When you think about 200 years in the future, it's a like longue durée. Yeah, I was trained as a historian in my first education. I remember reading Brodel and Febvre, and they were talking about 300 years of capitalist transformation from the world of Philip II onwards. You need to really take a longer view. Politicians don't. Politicians think about the next election cycle. Will I get elected next year? How will I stay in power until 2026 or 2027? But when you look at the global climate, it's a problem that is multi-generational. It's multi-century. So I'm looking at this shift from victimhood to agency. In dominant political discourse, young people are often portrayed as victims of this, victims of the future. But youth movements are rejecting this passive role. They're engaging in something we can term ecological citizenship. Interestingly enough, it involves a kind of a rejection of the consumerist and materialist values that have driven the climate crisis. It's even, if you look at climate justice and even social justice, it's a left political ideology in some ways. It comes more from the left. And there is this rejection of consumerism and materialism among some young people. We often look at young people and say, oh, they just care about TikTok and Instagram, and they just want to buy the new bag and buy a new car, and whoever has a BMW is the coolest person in the block. But increasingly, young people are rejecting materialism and consumerism, at least in these climate movements. And I've actually done some engaged research talking to our organization called the Green Youth of Serbia. Of course, my paper isn't sort of contextualized locally. I didn't do a sociological research on people in Serbia. This is more of a broad, more theoretical overview. But to gain insight, I did talk to youth ecological organizations in Serbia. We had very large protests 2 years ago. For those of you who followed it, in Western Serbia, there's a lithium mine, apparently. I mean, there's a source of lithium. They're trying to mine it. And it's supposed to really ruin the ecological character of Western Serbia. Young people have protested so much that the company that was meant to mine this mineral, Rio Tinto, an international conglomerate, I think Anglo-Australian, actually pulled out. And they paused this entire project. Maybe it will return, maybe it won't. But there was a strong upsurge of young people protesting, and this really inspired actually this paper. So there's this resurgence of internal values actually that I actually found internationally doing the literature review and looking at other organizations. They have these values of community, solidarity, and global responsibility over something we can call external values of wealth and individual success. So they're moving away from individualism. It's something I'm really excited about to examine young people. And youth movements are inherently cosmopolitan. They have digital networks. There's something connected to the previous paper before mine in the panel. Digital networks, but here used to build global solidarity that's transnational. So various people from across the world can actually protest together through the internet. I think digital protests, this is something that actually can be looked at as well in future papers. So what is the imperial reality? I think that participation in climate activism is actually a transformative experience for young people. It gives them a sense of agency, political efficiency in a generation that was labeled as apathetic. So when you look at the world and climate change is happening and your political environment is negative towards your participation, what you actually think about is, I can do nothing, I'll just be anxious, I'll just be depressed and give up. And we do have an increase in neuroticism, anxiety, and depression among young people. I think it's related. So what these climate movements are actually giving young people is a sense of agency. Don't be passive, don't be afraid, you can actually do something. Get out there and change the world at least a little bit. And I do see that this agenda is actually shifting, that issues that were once considered fringe, just scientific debates, such as carbon neutrality, they have now moved to the center of political debate. And I think a lot of this is youth-led pressure. You can see this at the UN level, you can see this at the EU level. Youth organizations, especially youth environmental and climate organizations, are really becoming more active and have pressure and have actually moved policy at the EU level. I mean, we have the EU green agenda, we have carbon neutrality by 2050, we have a lot of these ecological, actually the green agenda in the EU is maybe bad for economic development, it's maybe bad for competitiveness, but it's good for a long-term viability as a continent. So we have international organizations that are increasingly institutionalizing youth voices, and I think this will be the measure of success of youth climate activism. Are they a legitimate voice? So to conclude, what I try to offer with this research is an interpretive framework that frames youth climate activism as a primary site where social justice is reimagined. So social justice provides the framework for correcting unearned vulnerabilities. Climate justice transposes this to the environment, provides a global and ethical scope, and intergenerational justice creates a temporal depth about protecting the future. So it's social justice, but climate justice, which is intergenerational justice. So it's a kind of theoretical synthesis and a new way of looking at climate movements and climate youth activism. So this movement is not just about ecology, it's about rights, solidarity, and the power to make changes even if you're young. And the youth climate movement, I think, it demands a world where the benefits of the present are not stolen from the future, and where the costs of development are not just thrown on the young and the most vulnerable and on the global south. And the activism is a kind of a struggle for a just world, an ecologically, generationally, and socially just world, which actually, as a cosmopolitan, makes me more optimistic about the world of tomorrow. So this is a kind of active practice of justice. I think young people aren't just protesting, they aren't just angry, they're not gonna forget about it tomorrow, they're actively practicing justice and actually showing us how to do it. So this is what I'd like to share. Thank you, Dr. Pearce. I hope I stayed within my time, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Urosh. Just barely, I was just about to raise my hand a couple of times, but you were already nearing the conclusion. So I said, okay, go for it, because, well, I'm actually very glad to have heard that, because, you know, in these days, it's rare to hear, you know, this optimistic voice about the future of Europe, about the possibilities of collaboration, of to say international collaboration, of intergenerational collaboration in something that will improve our life. Obviously, of course, we will need to, of course, to see whether the normative standards and whether we justify what we really want to create, or how we want to change something. There's always a danger of manipulation from the ones in power. So what I hope that you will also in your project, in your endeavor, be able to be careful about this. Of course, that's not every movement is without its agenda. But without further ado, because now we are a bit tight with time, a little bit, because I relaxed the the limitations for your speech. There is a time for a short question, but not much more. Is there a short question for Urosh and his discussion on the possibilities of youth collaboration. Is there a question? Is there a comment, perhaps?
I will just mention if there are no questions, just a quick comment, not to take time. You made a really good point, Dr. Pearce, that often political actors try to kind of instrumentalize and take over these movements and use them for their own gain. I think from what I've seen, the Secretary General of the UN is a very honest person and really accepting of it. And in Serbia, there's a problem of this, of course, because we're not very much of a democracy. But at the UN level, from what I've seen in the empirical data so far, it seems to be genuine. I mean, the UN at least has no agenda really per se, except its own institutional agenda, which is oriented towards climate change. But it is a real problem. And actually looking at how some governments might actually instrumentalize these youth movements for their own political agendas would be a good paper to go next, actually. So thank you for giving me a good idea.
Of course, Urosh, I think, right now we are living in times when every step we take kind of presents us with new opportunity to collaborate, to do something, basically a new invitation, a new challenge, the climate change, of course, the situation right now in the Near East, the whole tensions, the issues that we have on a global level right now, and they all present an opportunity, but we need to grab it and we need to work on it. So, and also, of course, be careful of the many angles. I think we are of the same ideas here, Urosh. I think we will have more time later on at the end of the second panel. We will now continue with the next speaker, but of course, Urosh, we may return to your talk later on. Nina Raunik-Palka is our final speaker of this first panel. Nina Raunik-Palka is a PhD candidate at the Alma Mater European University, the Institute for Humanities, and of course the Faculty of Humanities. And of course, Nina Raunik-Palka is also a presenter that will be with us in the second panel as well. So the first talk she has today is called Dr. Milan Eric, tribute to his life achievements and doctoral dissertation. And we are very much looking forward to that. Nina, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will try to share my screen and PowerPoint. Firstly, thanks to Valdrina and Uroš for their wonderful presentations with very important challenges and topics. Mine will be a bit different. Maybe I can just share my role. I'm following this conference for about, 5 years. I started as undergraduate student, and now this is my first opportunity to present here. I was years before in audience, but now this is my first time as a speaker, so I'm very thankful for that. In the audience, I also saw Dr. Anja Helmut Kramberger, who was my mentor for my master's thesis, and also, hello, I'm very glad to see you, and this also was mentor for the doctoral dissertation of the researcher Miran Eric I will present. So no pressure for me. I'll start with sharing now. I hope you will see everything as it should be seen. No. Do I need to is it now full screen and you see the movement? First slide, second slide.
Everything seems to be in order, so yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. So with that, I will start my presentation, which, as mentioned before, a bit different than the first two, but I hope you will find it interesting. So this presentation is dedicated to our dear colleague Miran Eric, who studied as a PhD student at Alma Mater Europaea, Institutum Studiorum Humanitatis, and unfortunately left our world unexpectedly just shortly before the defense of his doctoral dissertation. Nevertheless, he completely finished and submitted the entire paper and received a posthumous doctorate afterwards. He was a unique person and scientist, an academic painter, underwater archaeologist, conservator, diver, and cave explorer. The combination of these specific interests and skills led him to many important discoveries. Therefore, the aim of this presentation is to acknowledge his considerable achievements. Likewise, his doctoral dissertation, Visual Expression and Creation in Archaeology, presented and analyzed based on the example of underwater archaeology, which he didn't have the opportunity to present himself, deserves some more scholarly attention. And for that reason, I would like to present some of its most important findings. Although I have never had the opportunity to meet Dr. Erich in person, his life and career inspired me deeply, and I consider it important to honor the memory of a great person and academic who happened to be a student of our university. At the outset, I would like to point out that in this presentation, I will be only able to show just a fraction of what Erich discussed in his doctoral thesis and achieved in his lifelong research. Due to the extensiveness and depth of his work, it is very difficult to summarize his achievements and findings in a short presentation. Therefore, I will highlight a few keynotes that appealed to me most, and if you're interested in his work, I invite you to review his various works, most of them also available online. As mentioned before, he wrote his doctoral dissertation under the mentorship of Dr. Anja Helmut-Kramberger and co-mentor Franz Solina, who was also Erich's longtime friend and collaborator, and wrote a memorial text about Erich's life upon his death, from which I quote some of important information about his work and achievements. Miran Eric began his painting studies at the Pedagogical Academy in 1982 and continued at the Academy of Fine Arts in Ljubljana at 1984. In order to pursue his passion for diving professionally, he enrolled in a specialist course in the field of wet wood protection at the academy. He later enrolled in master's degree at the Department of Archaeology, which he completed in 1998 with the thesis Wet Wood from Archaeological Sites in Slovenia. His passion was underwater archaeology, and he participated in the exploration of numerous archaeological sites along the entire eastern Adriatic coast and also in the inland waters of Slovenia, both rivers and lakes. After working as researcher at the Department of Archaeology at the Faculty of Arts, he joined Institute for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage in Slovenia, where he worked as conservator in the field of research and protection of underwater heritage. In the field of 3D documentation, Miran collaborated with the Computer Vision Laboratory at the Faculty of Computer Science and Informatics, where he met Franz Solina for collaboration for multi-image photogrammetry.
Sorry, Nina, your slides are not moving.
Okay, I'm at the third. What do you
Yes,
see now?
there is
first
an
page.
issue with the slide. So can you please can you try to start again with the maybe sometimes it just needs to be restarted.
Okay. Thanks for
Now try first and without going into projection mode.
I see something weird, so let me just close. Aha. I don't know, the several PowerPoints are opened. I will try it now once again.
Just go with the screen feature, right? Don't choose the PowerPoint, choose the screen. So basically, so you share with us what is currently on screen. And then it should be that.
Najprej odprem PowerPoint.
Jaz sem, ko boš dala share screen, daj share screen, ne da share ta specifičen PowerPoint. To včasih potem zašteka. Veš pač daj, kar je na zaslonu, to prva možnost.
Okay,
Tole, screen, a ne got entire screen, ne application Windows, tako.
I'm sorry for that. Okay.
Probeer zij forward and drop slide. Yeah, we see the next slide now. So
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And you see the next now.
yes,
Yes.
everything
Hvala.
is
Hvala, I'm sorry for that. So maybe just addition here. I mostly put pictures so you can listen to me, and because also the topic is connected with visual literacy, so you didn't miss much. This is Dr. Erich as a diver and some portrait of him. He's painting at the university. And this was the third slide. So thank you. Where I was, I mentioned that he met Franz Solina for collaboration for multi-image photogrammetric documentation of underwater artifacts. This method enables precise 3D modeling of underwater objects based on a multitude of overlapping photographs. In this way, they collaborated to document and analyze a stone Roman sarcophags and other stone semi-finished products on a sunken Roman ship near the island of Brač. The analysis of the Roman ship near Sinja Gorica in Ljubljanica was similar. Miran also found a Paleolithic wooden point in Ljubljanica right near this Roman ship. And they later worked a lot on this finding, and Miran was not in favor of standard wetwood conservation procedures. He advocated a non-aggressive approach to the conservation of wet archaeological wood, where the point would be kept in conditions similar to those it had been in for thousands of years. That is, by keeping it in a container of water, where they would try to reproduce the same conditions as before its discovery. Among his fellow archaeologists from around the world, Miran will remain remembered as the initiator of the early watercraft, a global perspective of invention and development. So moving on to doctoral dissertation, I quote, decades of involvement in archaeological research and the production of visual material for reports and research publications have created a need to define this challenging and complex part of heritage research. The aim is to show that the production of visual material, which is very common in archaeological research, is not only a technical task that can only be carried out by an experienced draughtsman. End of quote. In dissertation, however, the focus is on the theoretical foundations of visual language and its importance throughout the educational process. The author wanted to present the different theoretical concepts dealing with visual communication, because all these different theories only partially reflect all aspects of visual expression and their influence on the results. It is also worth noting that in recent years, the field of computer vision has explored new possibilities where research with artificial intelligence and neural networks is leading to fully automated work with images. And in recent years, the latest phenomenon of generation of images and even videos from verbal descriptions has been intensively developed. When creating images in the content of underwater heritage research, we have to deal with the more difficult peculiarities of the part that is carried out in the field, as we are working in an aquatic environment that does not correspond to the natural human habitat and requires special adaptations that are not necessary in land archaeology. Modern technologies and new methods are available to us in the study of the underwater cultural heritage, which have enabled the development of new research and study methods, including the use of 3D models. This has finally enabled us to obtain the very accurate documentation, which was extremely difficult, if not impossible, before. We need to complement the existing standards of underwater archaeological research with the appropriate use of modern technologies and new standards of imaging in scientific research, the object of which is the creation and presentation of 3D models. Therefore, Erich concludes that visual literacy and the use of visual language in the process of archaeological work has a strong influence on the improved results of underwater archaeological research, enhances existing documentation and communication methods, and provides new cognitive and communicative opportunities in the study of underwater heritage. The development of entirely new forms of image expression in the field of 3D digital heritage in the last decade is of great importance for archaeological research. It fundamentally changes the methodological process in underwater archaeological research and significantly improves the image results on this research. In addition to all of the above, it is very important to emphasize the extraordinary added value of using new knowledge in image expression. In several cases, notably the processing results of the Sinja Gorica ship research, authors showed how the quality of these results can be improved by understanding image theory and why the application of visual language rules will influence research processes in archaeology. The focus of this review is primarily on the rapidly evolving application of 3D and 4D methods, recognizing that 2D methods are already on the decline in the archaeology in order to adapt to the most modern methods of data acquisition and image generation. The archaeological methodology of research procedures will probably have to change to a great extent in the near future. And to conclude, with a better knowledge of visual theory, communication between authors and users of archaeological visual material and content is greatly improved, while at the same time creating the possibility of using new forms of communication with professionals and other audiences. In particular, author wants to raise awareness of the importance of education in visual literacy and visual language in order to make better use of the content and increase the usefulness of archaeological visual material and thus the results of archaeological research, and indirectly change the attitudes of the profession and the public towards cultural heritage. With this and a few pictures, I would like to conclude my presentation. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nina, for this concise, very interesting presentation. I think Professor Anja Helmut Kramberger is already preparing herself to jump in with a question or a comment. So
Yes, I would like to give a comment. Thank you,
Yes.
Nina. Thank you so much for this presentation. I was so happy when I saw the title of your presentation in the program, and I was really looking forward to see it. Because I think that, as you also presented, it is still an important work, and I hope that we can in the future also make the publication of this important work, because at the moment, of course, most of the archaeological colleagues, they are not aware of these results, and this was something what I also told Miran, that this is really a good work, an important work for archaeologists especially, and that it should be published. So unfortunately, he could not present it, as you said, to us directly. And I still think that we should tackle this goal to publish this work and take care that it gets the recognition that it deserves. So yes, thank you very much. And maybe we should discuss about this possibility one day to make the project and publish together this work.
Well, you know where the publishing house is, so
Yes.
you just need to prepare the material. We can, of course, push it
But
through.
it's a large book, so it's not a small task.
Maybe even Nina will be up to task, or you two together. Certainly, there's possible, I think, collaboration with you two yet. But okay, maybe Nina, will you? I mean, it's not really wasn't really a question, but will you maybe make a reply to what Anja just?
Yes, thank you very much for you being here, and also for all the inspiration that, in a way, led me here to even find this. Yes, I totally agree. It's very precise and very important work. So this presentation maybe was only the beginning of highlighting that. So I hope and believe it will get more recognition in future.
Okay. Well, there's that also kind of signals the end of our first panel, but the panels are connected anyway, so we had time to maybe go just a bit over the time limit. Well, I suggest that if there is still a question for Nina, I suggest to maybe save that for later. There will still be time. Nina will also have another presentation, so we can mix that if we really want to, I think, later on. But now we should continue with the new presentation, the first presentation of the second panel, which is again the presentation from one of the PhD students at the university, alma mater Europaea University. So basically from the house, to say so. It's Valentina Cvjetkovic. I'm sorry, Cvjetkovic. And of course, she will present us the paper, The Potential of Beekeeping for Effective Social Reintegration of Vulnerable Groups in the Context of Post-Conflict Reconstruction in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Definitely a different and interesting topic. Valentina, please, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Greetings on my part as well to all the participants. Thank you also for this short introduction. As Dr. Pirc told, I am Valentina Cvjetkovic and I am a PhD candidate at alma mater Europaea University. I will just briefly walk you through at the current work on my doctoral thesis, and hopefully I will be successful in sharing the screen there. So can you see the slides?
Poskušaš dati sam na drugega, da vidimo, če se premika. Dela, odlično.
Okay. Thank you very much. So as it was mentioned, my doctoral thesis are exploring the potential of beekeeping for effective social reintegration of vulnerable groups in the context of post-conflict reconstruction of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Since Bosnia and Herzegovina is a multi-ethnic country, the internal diversification of the population is intrinsically linked to religious affiliation. It involves a community of Croats, Serbs, and Bosniak that is also intervening of Catholicism, Orthodox Christianity, and Islam within the framework of a single state. The boundaries between communities in Bosnia are largely politically constructed, despite the fact that the inhabitants share a common culture, language, and historical experience. The current situation in Bosnia has been deeply shaped by the 4-year war, which ended with the signing of the peace agreement in Dayton on November 21st in 1995. The agreement preserved the territorial integrity of Bosnia and the unity of the state, based on a federal structure with a high degree of decentralization. In this context, and following the collapse of the old value system of the common state of Yugoslavia, a need emerged to create a new unifying narrative, and national parties filled this void by creating new narratives through which they sought to construct social memory, primarily to legitimize the existence of the three distinct identities. The politicization of history as a mechanism for a reconstruction national identity has proven to be one of the key strategies. And religion also plays an active role in Bosnia in reshaping and adapting identities to a new social and political circumstances. In this specific context of Bosnia, religion has simultaneously functioned as a unifying element among the individuals and as a key differentiator between the groups. So national identities in Bosnia are grounded in the shared religion and represent collectively controlled constructions. So this is a brief frame which is this research will be conducted in. So we reach the second slide, when I will just shortly describe the research study. So in my dissertation, I will examine post-conflict reconstruction of identities and analyze the relationship between ethnicity, religion, and nationalism, and also their significance and role in the social reintegration of marginalized groups. Because since the end of the armed conflict in Bosnia, landmine victims have remained among the most marginalized social groups. They are characterized by the high unemployment rates, they have limited access to the labor market, and often insufficient institutional support from the state. So unemployment rate among the people with disability in Bosnia is approximately 85%, and access to the labor market is one of the greatest challenges. I will focus on the period from 2020 onwards, since this date marks the start of the implementing of the project, Beekeeping as a Tool for Empowering Mine Victims in Bosnia, which is conducted in partnership with the ITF, Enhancing Human Security, the Organization of Amputee UDAS of Republic of Srpska, and with Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia of Agriculture Institute of Slovenia. The project is funded through the International Development Cooperation of the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia and through donations of the Republic of Korea. So this project primarily focuses on economic empowerment of vulnerable groups, environmental consideration, and the psychosocial rehabilitation of landmine victims. Since the beekeeping showed as a highly effective approach when it comes to agriculture activity, since it does not need high financial impact at the beginning, and also works in areas with limited technological sources and capital. So, what is my research objective? In my thesis, I will focus on potential of beekeeping, how effective it can be as a tool or mechanism for social reintegration, and especially how to examine how beekeeping as a local, economical, and also social practice contributes to the formation of the new post-conflict identities among landmine victims in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The dissertation will focus on the process through which vulnerable groups, by participating in the beekeeping activities, create unifying identities that transcends traditional ethnic, national, and religious frameworks. And especially how does beekeeping as an identity relate to an individual's other identities if we understand it as an identity that is not exclusive, but rather inclusive and unifying. So to reach these goals, different research methodology will be used in work. The work will be divided into two interrelated sections. In the first, theoretical section of the dissertation will be based on systematic analysis of literature, also of the analysis of the similar project already implemented in other areas. And the second empirical part of the doctoral dissertation is based on an in-depth case study of the development project I mentioned earlier, and also on the field work and in-depth interviews. The ethical aspect of the research here is highly important, since we are talking about very sensitive information, mostly also with traumatical experience, and so the ethical aspect of research is taken highly into the consideration. And also the project itself is ongoing 6 years, and it provides also let's say a framework of work where this trust can be built and also established for deeper research of the topic which is presented here. So I expect some contribution to the science with my PhD work. I would like to show the impact of beekeeping on social rehabilitation of landmine victims in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I would like to highlight how everyday practices with an economic and environmental foundation can contribute to the long-term transformation of conflictual relationships. Since also at the state that the world it is today, hopefully this can be also contributed to the other conflict areas and the strengthening of the post-conflict identity reconstruction as the formation of the new social connections. So this is just to show just some basic literature that will be used with my doctoral thesis, and thank you for your attention and opportunity to present the work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, it is always good to hear that there are new topics being researched, which can be quite innovative, which can be relevant in the long run, especially given the world situation as it is right now, which is also become basically something that I continue to repeat. So I'm happy, Valentina, that you presented us with this proposal. I'm very much looking forward when I can hear more from it. Right now, because we are slightly in the second panel, for the second panel we have a little bit of a time issue, so we can't go too overboard with time with the type of presentations. So there's just a time for a very short question or comment, if there is one. Is there perhaps one? Otherwise, we can return later. We see how we stand. If not, then I propose that we, for now, leave it as is. And of course, Valentina, with my wishes of a good luck with your thesis, we might return to you and your topic later on, but after, of course, the presentations have been concluded. Now, let's continue with the dissertation from our guest from the University of Łódź, Maria Di Sacula. I hope I read this correctly. Her topic is Disability in Literature for Children and Young Adults, a bibliological perspective, the research project, which seems to be a very interesting topic. Maria, please, you have around 10 minutes.
Give me just a moment, please. I will share the screen. Okay, I hope it's visible. So, I would like to tell you a little bit about disability in literature for children and young adults from the bibliological perspective. It is my PhD thesis research project. Recently, it was slightly changed, so now I will be concentrating only on the part related to the children, not young adults anymore. Today I will briefly present you the definition of disability that I will be working with, the present, the reception, the distribution, and the production of literature for children about disability in Poland, and at the end, obviously, bibliography. So, first of all, I would like to tell you about the relevance of this topic, and according to the statistics of Poland, the disability is the topic that touches directly 14% of the national population. But what is also, it's a huge amount, but what is also very important, that disability is a topic that related not only to the people with disabilities, but also to the people related to them, like the family members, educators, healthcare professionals, social workers, and the society in general. And I already conducted a preliminary research which showed that only 0.8% of all the children literature published in Poland between 2018 and 2022 focuses on this topic. So it's not even 1% of all the literature for children which was published during this period. To begin with, I would like to tell about the definition of disability. As you may know, there are a lot of functioning definitions. Maybe the most known is the World Health Organization definition of disability. But for my research project, I decided that the UN Economic Commission for Europe definition will be the most adequate. This definition is recommended to be used during the statistics research in many UN countries. So this definition tells that persons with disabilities are defined as those who are at the greater risk than the major population. And it proposed some domains of disability, like walking, seeing, hearing, cognition, and two extra, like self-care and communication. And there are specific questions that help to establish what domain of disability we are talking about to go deeper. And in my research, I will concentrate on the life circle of literature of disability for children in Poland in the 21st century, and I will examine the presence, production, distribution, and reception of this literature. And the first part, the presence, I will concentrate on, it will be conducted using the bibliographic analysis. On the official bibliographic guide published by the National Library, where we have all the published books in Poland listed in with all the bibliographic information. And the aim of this will be to establish the proportion of disability-themed book in Poland related to all the books published in Poland. Also, what types of disability are represented, what publishing houses are publish books about disability. The second part will be related to the reception, and it will be conducted by the survey, online survey among parents to establish whether or not they know about disability-themed books. Is this topic relevant for their children? What are the gaps, known gaps in disability? What are the not represented or represented topics or disability-related topics in children literature? The third part will be distribution. So in this part, I will concentrate on voivodeship libraries and to establish, just like to see what criteria are taken into consideration while creating their book catalogs in the libraries. And also I will look into their online catalogs to compare with my list of disability-themed books to see whether or not they are available on the library catalogs. And the last part will be related to the production, and in this part I will do qualitative interviews with publishing houses, foundations, institutions, and organizations that already published literature for children related to disability, to see what factors are taken into consideration in the decision-making process, what are the barriers in publishing books on disability, and just like how it is produced. By answering all these questions, the aim is to create the full image of the life circle of literature on disability for children in Poland, to show from different perspectives how those books what are the number of those books, how they are created, how they are distributed, especially within public libraries at the most accessible place for the population to get to those books, and also is there any need for those books, is there any particular need and interested. So this is the bibliography, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria. This was a very nice presentation. Also, very, very important one. You know, I remember once I had very small, the thing about disability is I also have, I'm very familiar with the topic because in our family there is a person who needs extra care, and we know how much it takes, to actually for this person to cope with the situation right now. And until you really experience the issues, the challenges that people with disabilities face, you frequently don't even notice just how hard it is sometimes to even do very menial tasks, so very simple tasks. And I'm happy, Maria, that you showed a bit of light on this topic, because I think it is relevant, and I'm certain that our audience also thinks that way. There is a time for a question or two, if any of you is willing to ask our presenter or give a comment. I do think that, of course, this is the topic that in a way touches everyone, or at least it should.
As we are getting older, it may touch everyone.
I can say that with the this is my short comment, maybe slash question as well. I also teach IT, where I had the ethics of IT, and I had this topic of a student of the question of how to improve the digital life of the people with disabilities. And of course, it's sometimes something that we have not yet completely challenged. That there's, of course, in physical disabilities, and of course, working with people in physical world is something that I think is getting to be noticed, and it's correct that it is. Though, as you mentioned, it's still not. There's still not enough. There's still very little literature done about that. But in digital world, and how to ease the digital access, for people with disabilities that come from learning disabilities, physical disabilities, and so on. This is still an issue, and this is an increasingly digitalized world where some services can only be done digitally. This can be a huge issue. What do you think about that as well? How did this maybe this area also, this very virtual but very real issue? How does it, also how is relevant for you and your research as well?
It's very relevant, and I just like I have little access to it, as I also am very interested in UX UI. So actually, we need to be aware that different people are using our products and may have different needs. And sometimes being aware makes us able to do small changes that doesn't ask us to rewrite or recreate the product we are working with, just to help others to be able to use it. And actually, I think that begins with the being aware that the person on the other side of the monitor may have special needs.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this answer, which I think is really encapsulates very well, this issue, this challenge for us, and kind of showcases what we need to do and need to be careful about. And I agree, this is very Rawlsian, but very correct in these days. Just after the days after the death of Habermas, we need to think about that sometimes maybe our not just our colleagues, or the people in front of us can be someone we don't really expect them to. We can also very soon find ourselves in the situation we have not expected, and
Yes,
therefore, of course, we need to be open for all that. Okay, thank you, Maria. This was an excellent presentation. Now, of course, we will again return to Nina Raunik-Palka, who has another paper for us. And this time it's caring, inclusive, and accessible museums for everyone. Now you know the drill, Nina. You know everything already, so please be our guest. Not just
Yes, thank you very much. I hope this second time my presentation will go on smoothly. Thanks to Valentina and Maria for very good presentations. I know a bit of Valentina's work before, but Maria, very interesting, and I think in a way maybe even a bit connected to my topic in some aspects. So let me share my screen now. And I will kindly ask you to tell me if you see the slides moving. So the first one and the second one.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So the concepts of care and inclusion are fundamental for cohesive coexistence in the modern world. They could also be associated with cultural heritage and likewise archaeological finds. Therefore, the main focus of this presentation is the interconnection of the concepts of care, inclusion, cultural heritage, archaeological finds, and museums. Archaeological finds are most often presented to the wider public within thematic exhibitions in museums. However, those exhibitions should specifically address even more the concepts of care, inclusion, and accessibility, and include also people with disabilities. My aim is to present care and cultural heritage with an emphasis on the concept of museums for everybody, which is about accessibility and inclusiveness. As an example of good practice, the international project COMIN is highlighted, along with some of the practical solutions and important findings about the inclusive and accessible museums and exhibitions. What is probably most crucial about the subject is cooperation with people with disabilities in all those activities, starting with the very beginning of the creative processes of designing the exhibitions and even the artifacts. Caring for the exhibits can also mean caring for people and consequently creating museums for all people. Shortly, some theoretical background about the topic. Care or concern in this presentation is about the cultural heritage, especially archaeological finds presented during exhibitions in museums, and even more about the different people who intend to visit those exhibitions. Concern and caring for one means also caring for the other. Concerning, that is caring, includes many different activities and measures when talking about space in general or museum as exhibition space. As Ilke Krasny points out about feminist spatial practices, we are essentially talking about existential dimensions of space that must be cared for so that people can care for themselves and others in it. End of quote. And once again, that is the exact point I would like to present in connection with museum space, presented artifacts as cultural heritage and the visitors. With caring for one, we care for another, ourselves, and each other. Much of the work of caring occurs in cultural heritage microspaces, for example, in the transmission of knowledges, in the observance of traditions, in the work of conservation, in archaeological excavation, and in less overt ways such as installing fire retardant systems and similar tools that physically protect the museum. Museums educate, curate, conserve, collect, exhibit, and even digitize. These varied roles might be framed in the language of caring, defined by a care ethicist as a mode of responding to others which recognizes them, and in this case, their cultural creations and expressions as real human beings. Unfortunately, I have to skip some of acknowledgements about legal framework, and I will move on with the presentation of the project Come In. The project coordinated a network of museums, associations of people with disabilities, academic representatives, training institutions, and policymakers that jointly defined an innovative strategic approach on how to promote the accessibility to museums. And during the project, the participants co-created some documents like guidelines for further work and activities, especially for museums and similar institutions. What is more, along with developing a strong theoretical base, they were also very active on a practical level and tried to incorporate all the acknowledgements in the actual work and activities, and likewise continue with that even after the project officially finished. The common guidelines have been developed for the project. It intends to valorize the Central European cultural heritage, increasing the capacities of small and medium-sized museums by making them accessible to a wider public. The overarching goal of the project is inclusion, which influences the whole process based on participation, which means nothing about people with disabilities without people with disabilities involved. Non-discrimination, which means that people with disabilities are treated on an equal basis with others, respecting the dignity and the right of people with disabilities, and also very important, correct wording. The other fundamental concept is accessibility, as stated by Article 9 of the UN Disability Rights Convention, which says accessibility or freedom from barriers is an essential condition for the equality of people with disabilities and their participation in society. Accessibility has to take into account physical access, access to information and communication, social access, and economical access. Moving on to the concept of museums for everyone. Its focus is to develop positive attitudes towards the rights of others and those who are different within the museum context. That involves learning and spreading awareness, which means educating the staff of the museum as well as sharing acknowledgements with the wider audience. Along with that it is important to introduce the basic guidelines for working with or approaching people with disabilities to the museum employees and, if possible, to other people. It is necessary to develop the skills and abilities needed to implement social transformations and encourage additional activities related to this group of visitors, such as guided tours, seminars, workshops, and similar. A very important aspect of the concept of museums for everyone is to strengthen inclusive action, which means cooperation at all kinds of activities within the museum. Those educational concepts were also presented in the works Accessibility for Everyone, which were published by the Tiflological Museum in Zagreb. Moving on to the practical example, the Archaeological Museum of Istria has cooperated in the common project and implemented numerous activities within the project. They have mounted a platform for people with disabilities in front of the gallery C8 and built an access ramp leading to the underground areas of the amphitheater in Pula. They have purchased many pieces of equipment, such as computers, printers for 3D models, tactile images, and labels written in Braille, and similar, intended for work for easier communication with people with disabilities. The staff have been trained to adjust the work to their people with disabilities needs, and have lobbied local, regional, and state politicians. Finally, they have set up the exhibition Prehistory in Hands and made related catalogs. Prehistory in Hands is an exhibition that provides a simple overview, understandable to everyone, of the whole prehistoric period in Istria by using reconstructions of houses, object replicas, and simple multilingual labels. Many exhibited replicas may be touched. The texts are written in Braille too. Certain contents are represented in the form of tactile drawings. The movement through the exhibition has been made easier by tactile drawings. and tactile trails, and many elements have been introduced to allow people with vision impairment to find their way around more easily. The exhibition was supported by two catalogs, a Croatian Italian English one and Croatian one written in Braille, intended for blind people and people with vision impairments. Many accompanying events, such as lectures, workshops, concerts, and organized guided tours, have been planned as part of the exhibition. The main objective of both the exhibition and the project as a whole was to improve the accessibility of museums and programs for people with disabilities. However, it does not end here. The exhibition and the project have a more important goal, though, that is to raise awareness and sensibility of a broader community about the difficulties and problems of people with disabilities. While implementing the project, they were involved in an active dialogue with people with disabilities who made them aware of the problems that this part of community is facing on a daily basis. Then it was
Nina,
realized.
slowly get to conclusion, please.
Okay. They realized that they had only scratched the surface and that it would take much more effort and investment to include people with disabilities in the cultural life of community to a satisfactory extent. I will move to conclusion. Just before were mentioned the website, and even at that point, museums try to be as accessible and inclusive as possible. So this is an example of Maritime Museum Piran, Sergei Mashera, that made a lot of adaptations, even including websites. So I will just conclude shortly. Museums are places of knowledge, exploration, excitement. They are spaces in which everyone, regardless of ability, should have the opportunity to participate. Through easy but meaningful adaptations, through shared knowledge, we can create museum spaces that are inclusive and accessible to all. And by opening the door to accessibility to people with disabilities, we open the door to broader understanding, social participation, and a museum of the future, museum for all people. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nina, for this very concise, sweet, very also on the other hand, very to say this compact but fulfilling presentation. So I think we learned a lot about how future should look like. Hopefully, it also will look like. Our museums are important for the preservation of the past. However, they also need to look toward the future. I think we can kind of summarize this. And of course, also to look to be inclusive to everyone. I do think we had this very nice connection done, between the past two papers. How now we have another one which is supposed to be something that is kind of completely new. We may return to you, Nina, but we went a bit over the time limit, so I can't really allow more questions right now. There is an issue, I think, with the program, which Alesh will be able to untie. I don't think you are the author of the paper that should come next, New Authoritarianism and the Role of Philosophy, right? Or are you? You do have.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I am. Yes.
Okay, so you have two papers right now.
Yes.
And this is not a mistake. Okay.
No, so this is not.
You will be able to talk about those kind of together, basically fit them in one presentation, of course. But I suggest that when you do,
yes.
You have obviously you can separate them all you wish, but there will be maybe the possibility for some questions or answers after both of those presentations. And I also need to announce something. Of course, there will be a survey which will pop up in a few minutes. Just so so you can you can of course use it, you can of course solve it. But without further ado, Alesh, you have there are two papers from our newest PhD, Dr. Alesh Čakalić.
Yes.
Congrats from my side. The first paper was
Thank
called
you.
Authoritarianism and the Role of Philosophy, and the second is the revival of instrumental post-Yugoslav cinema in the age of burgeoning neoconservatism in the region, 2012 to 2025. Very interesting and extremely relevant topics. I really look forward to them. Alesh, you have around 20 minutes for both of them. We will go a little bit over the time limit. Hopefully, they don't kick us out, but if they do,
Okay,
don't
okay.
be. So, okay.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you, thank you. I would rather present them separately because I have prepared the speeches this way. So I would just maybe need a little bit help with sharing screen. How do I
Just
clicked.
go down there, you have share or
Yes.
you see, you click that, then
Yes.
you use the share screen feature, and
Yeah.
then you just open. You see, you already did. You just open
Yes.
the presentation you want, the paper you want.
Do you see it
But
now?
yes, we do. But be careful that if you do change, the application or
Okay.
something, it will also change for us. So in that way, just have it on your PowerPoint and we'll be okay. All right.
Okay. So
Okay.
do you see the second slide now?
We see capitalist realism.
Okay. Okay. So let me begin. In his take on Mark Fisher's argument that capitalist realism is the mode of realism that is highly adaptable to ever-changing circumstances of the capitalist order, philosopher Yuval Krimnitzer delivers a weighty reading of new authoritarianism, the style of authoritarian politics that has recently infected many areas of the liberal democratic world, including some of the world's most significant geopolitical centers of power. Krimnitzer argues that new authoritarianism normalizes what up until recently was considered impossible or unacceptable, thus stretching the limits of what transgresses the norm and effectively making normality indistinguishable from aberration. New authoritarian regimes, according to Kremnitzer, crack down on political opposition without outlawing it entirely. They seek to get effective control of the media without making them a direct channel of state propaganda. They maintain unfair advantages in elections but do not cancel them. The main focus of these regimes is anti-liberalism, which is to say the gradual and continued erosion of liberal values and institutions. Their quintessential attributes are nihilism, transgression, and utter cynicism. And they have perfected the use of modern IT and media to make the most out of them. Although it might be tempting, we cannot boil all this down to some banal lust for political power and profits. There is a serious destructive tendency behind all this swagger, a tendency to undermine the two fundamental pillars of our existence and society, truth and ethics. New authoritarianism provides very little or no appreciation for truth, suffocating the media and press releases with an avalanche of something which the American philosopher Harry Frankfurt aptly termed bullshit. In his famous 1986 essay, Frankfurt put forward that bullshit is speech which is intended to persuade without regard for truth. The point being that liars care about the truth and attempt to hide it, whereas bullshitters couldn't care less whether what they say is true or false. The other fundamental pillar of humanity that is endangered by new authoritarianism is ethics. New authoritarianism is not interested in common good, let alone in the well-being of marginal social groups. If it does possess any principle at all, it is the principle of exclusion. It is supposed to be protecting its own nation, and yet it is doing everything in its power to set citizens against each other. It has no cosmopolitan dimensions, and instead, in the most blatant cases, conducts military operations towards designated enemies, invading sovereign states, committing all kinds of war crimes, including killing civilians, and leaving devastation in its wake. It is also very hostile towards environmental endeavors. Thus, the hard-earned ethical concepts of both human rights and the welfare of nature are, in the context of new authoritarianism, made adversaries, made unwanted. As philosophers, we must react. We must react because the questions of truth and ethics, the questions of that which is true and of that which is good, constitute the very core of philosophy itself, from ancient times to modernity. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy we associate with the search for truth and knowledge, and it forms the basis of what we call theoretical philosophy. On the other side, ethics deals with the questions of good and bad and represents the core of so-called practical philosophy. Even though some influential, important, and not to be dismissed currents of post-war critical philosophy, such as discourse analysis, deconstruction, and psychoanalysis, sowed seeds of doubt and relativity regarding the questions of truth and ethics, there is no denying that philosophy is still the pivotal scientific field when confronted with those two fundamental pillars of humanity. So perhaps philosophy is our best bet at leading us out of the labyrinth of authoritarian, transgressive, cynical nihilism. Regarding epistemology, there have been many different approaches to handling the question of truth. According to the influential psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, truth has the structure of fiction because it needs to be expressed through language and because language itself has the structure of fiction. This basically means that truth belongs to language, to the symbolic order, rather than to the reality itself. Yet this does not undermine the relevance of operating with truths, of searching for them. Analytic philosophy tends to present approaching truth through different theories, such as correspondence theory, coherence theory, pragmatic theory, and so on. In an interesting take on the pragmatic theory, American theoretical physicist Richard Feynman, who also contributed some insights to philosophy as science, remarkably noted that we are never definitely right, we can only be sure when we are wrong. Perhaps this somewhat Socratic attitude is the kind of modesty, the kind of humility we need in these difficult times, since new authoritarianism is also quite arrogant and condescending about its supposed knowledge. We should give our best to try to improve our understanding of the world around us. In doing so, in making progress, we need to build upon those findings we deem believable and convincing in the context of everything we already know. Perhaps we will never reach the ultimate truths. They may be unreachable, but at the very least we can separate lies and bullshit from more reliable standpoints. We need to say no to the destructive disregard for truth of new authoritarianism. And regarding ethics, we should never ever throw it under the bus as new authoritarianism does on a daily basis. There are miracles we can believe in even if we are not religious, and ethics is perhaps the latest in the series of such miracles. First, there was the philosophical being. Leibniz, Schelling, and Heidegger are three famous philosophers who were very much inspired by the fact or the original miracle that there is being rather than nothing. So being, the fact that there is being rather than nothing, is the first such miracle of the world. Then came the universe, the cosmos. Later, much later, life appeared. Oceans of time passed and then consciousness developed. And again, after an immense amount of time, the symbolic order emerged, the speech, the language. With it, an opportunity has arisen for the inception of ethics. Understood as such, understood as something awe-inspiring, arguably even sacred, we should treat ethics with great reverence and respect and never disdain it. Again, there have been countless efforts to define what is right and wrong, what is good and bad, in the 2.5 millennial history of practical philosophy. To me, the most fundamental tenet of ethics is relatively simple. We, the humanity, are endowed with the possibility of ethics, are able to help, given the ability to help, and we should accept this ability and fulfill it when someone or something needs our help and we can deliver. We do, however, have the right to refuse to help to someone who disrespects these same values. The cynical nihilism of new authoritarianism, with its contempt for truth and for the ethical pillar of society, calls for action, and we as philosophers must react precisely because the questions of the true and the good appertain to philosophy as such. New authoritarianism poses itself as a direct challenge of all things precisely to philosophy, and the power of philosophy, its ability to change the world for the better, should never be underestimated. Karl Marx once famously declared that the mission of philosophers is to change the world, and the welfare state and other social gains from recent centuries can be directly attributed to the theoretical legacy of social philosophy. In recent years, new authoritarianism situated itself as the greatest threat to society, and my proposition would be that we need to fight it with philosophy. That would be all.
Thank you very much, Alish. I think this is a super relevant presentation. I'm also working quite a lot in these areas. I do fully agree with the tenets of this talk, with what you said about. I would like to see, of course, if you continue with discussing on that, or for example, researching this topic, to go even farther into the question of ethics, especially what ethics, because it was in a way also the ethics, or maybe even the relativization of some of it, and some epistemological relaxation, including in analytic circles, that may have brought or made that quite impotent against the dangers of authoritarianism. So this is definitely one area which we need to enlighten. But I do agree. I think you really did open the very important topic, and there is a lot to be said about it. Unfortunately, we are really tight with time. I tried to go as fast through this second panel as possible, but 5 presentations in 1 hour, it's just too much. But Alish, please do continue, researching this. Especially, I have one very short question before you go on to the second paper. What do you think the influence of digital media? What is their influence on the rise of new authoritarianism? This is, of course, hotly debated topic, but I want to see your thoughts, maybe at least very shortly. What do you think? How important it is, and what can we do in future to actually to safeguard ourselves from the dangers of new authoritarianism?
Yes, I think it is extremely important. I think this new authoritarianism has really perfected the use of digital media, and I don't know. I think some legal actions might be necessary at the parliamentary level to contain this plague of new authoritarianism in digital media. Yes, extremely important. Of course.
Unfortunately, though, as we all know, right, the new authoritarianism does everything in their power to actually have at least a sway over the courts, over parliament, and so on. We've seen in many cases.
Yes.
Thank you, Alish. This was very interesting. Now you have another presentation. We will go a bit over the time frame that we had. I don't think anyone is complaining about that. I don't see any complaints right now. Then just write them, and you can write them to my mail if you wish. You have around 10 minutes, Alish. Then we will really conclude. So please, go on.
I will try to shorten this even more, if possible. So, do you see the second slide now? Okay.
We do.
Okay. So back in 2011, when film historian Jurica Pavičić published his monographic overview of the first 20 years of post-Yugoslav cinema, the main takeaway was that in the 1990s, films produced in the successor states of the former Yugoslavia were predominantly instrumental, either self-victimizing or self-balkanizing, or both at once. Made in conformance with the ruling ideologies and conveying obvious nationalistic messages, whilst in the 2000s, a consolidated or normalized line of post-Yugoslav cinema took over the reins and introduced more nuanced and plausible actions and characters, while simultaneously featuring less or none whatsoever propaganda. In the last decade and a half, a return to the nationalist discourse of the last decade of the 20th century has been noticeable in Croatian and Serbian film and television production. In 2014, Kristijan Milic made Number 55, a feature film about the Serbian encirclement and liquidation of 20 Croatian soldiers in the village of Kusonje near Pakrac on September the 8th, 1991. Here, the evolution of Pavičić's paradigm of self-victimization was at work. Pavičić had recognized a distinct wave of self-victimization films in Croatian cinema of the 1990s, whose task was to present Croats to the West as innocent victims of Serbia's aggression, victims who never even take revenge, but only passively accept the suffering inflicted on them by a demonic opponent. In Milic's number 55, the Kusanje Chetniks are once again unabashedly demonized. However, the Croats are no longer passive victims, but determined fighters who persist in the fight as long as there is still hope. Milic conveyed a similar view of the homeland war in the drama television series Missing, in which a Croatian military unit stranded in the territory of the Serbian parastate of Krajina makes its way back to safety through unpredictable and dangerous terrain where only Chetniks commit crimes. The key Croatian film and television project about the homeland war in the last decade is certainly Vrdoljak's biographical spectacle about General Ante Gotovina. The life story of an uneducated young man who left communist Croatia for the French Foreign Legion, returned in 1991 to liberate his homeland, and in the summer of 1995, as a general, played a key role in Operation Storm, which returned the territory of the Serbian parastate of Krajina to Croatia, glosses over the criminal chapters of his biography and his evasion of the Hague Tribunal. After the success of Storm and after the general's marriage to Colonel Dunja Zlojic, only very short documentary footage from the first and second Hague trials of Gotovina follows. The images of the acquittal, which are supposed to dispel even the slightest doubt about the legitimacy of the key Croatian military operation during the Yugoslav wars, are reinforced by scenes of Gotovina constantly warning against the disproportionate use of force before and during Operation Storm. The fact that he did too little in operational terms to prevent crimes against Serbian civilians is not mentioned in the film. The biography, in short, is immaculate. Even more important, in the film, Operation Storm itself is also immaculate, which is actually the official position of Croatian politics after 1995, regardless of who is in power there. The destruction and looting of Serbian houses is attributed to local henchmen and the individual will of vengeful soldiers, while the strategically encouraged expulsion of the Serbian people and the massacres of Serbian civilians are not mentioned. Vrdoljak does avoid demonizing Serbs. A significant portion of Serbian characters in the general have no bad intentions, and he also does not fall into pronounced self-victimization. He laments primarily the military, in no way passive victims of the homeland war, while the suffering of Croatian civilians is not highlighted too much. One could say that the general is a programmatic film text of slightly more liberal, pro-European circles within the Croatian conservative political options, which, of course, still do not deviate from the dominant ideological discourse or the constitutive myth of modern Croatian statehood about the impeccable shine of the storm. When the film appeared on television in an expanded form of a series, Croatian social networks went wild with negative reactions to its dilettante production, full of editing and content errors, endless staff dialogues, telenovela-like acting, and pathetic and cliched musical accompaniment. A return to nationalist discourse has also been noticeable in Serbian cinema in the last decade and a half. The populist Serbian Progressive Party has been in power in Serbia since 2012, and they make decisions on cultural policy and consequently on the financing of a significant part of Serbian audiovisual production. I will skip this as we don't have enough time and go directly to the film Dara from Jasenovac. In the film and series Dara from Jasenovac, Predrag Antonijević tackled perhaps the most nerve-wracking point in Serbian history after the Battle of Kosovo in the Middle Ages, namely the Ustaša genocide in the independent state of Croatia during World War II. In Dara from Jasenovac, Dara Ilić is a 10-year-old Serbian girl whose family, after the German Ustaša offensive against the partisans on Kozara in the summer of 1942, suffers the fate of many Serbs from northwestern Bosnia. The Ustaša take them by train in overcrowded cattle cars to the Jasenovac concentration camp. In the camp, shooting of internees is routine and ubiquitous, including for hiding personal belongings, and the Ustašas often use a hammer instead of a pistol as a means of execution. The central scene of the torture of the camp inmates is a gruesome night dinner of the Ustaša commanders in the open air, in the dim light of the lamp, during which the exhausted Serbian inmates are forced to dance Serbian kolo to live music, and when the music stops, they are forced to sit as quickly as possible on chairs, which are always one less than their number. The one left without a chair is killed by the Ustasha officer with a Srbosjek, a knife attached to a glove invented precisely for the purpose of slaughtering Serbs as efficiently as possible. After several rounds of such entertainment, the Ustashas kill all the Serbian inmates selected for this occasion. Now I will have to skip the rest of the contents of the film and go directly to the conclusion. Dara from Jasenovac is the most striking example of Serbian cinematic self-victimization. The entire film is a single Calvary of Serbs under the bloodied hands of the Ustasha murderous machine. The production itself is thoroughly professional, and all the crimes depicted in the film actually happened. However, some creative decisions by Antonijević and screenwriter Natasha Drakulić indicate that we are watching a tendentious interpretation of history. The film gives the disproportionate impression that almost all of the victims of the Jasenovac are Serbs. There are very few positive Croatian characters who would be willing to help the Serbs. And all the Ustasha characters are sadistic psychopaths. There is not a single one among them who would not be thirsty for Serbian blood. The film shows no desire to understand the events, to explore the background, to reveal the reasons for the Ustasha persecution of Serbs. Luburić's statement that they were being killed because they were Serbs, even if it may be accurate, beautifully illustrates the depth to which the film is prepared to go in its understanding of complex historical events. All this creates a sense of absolute Serbian self-victimization, which erases from the narrative everything that does not fit into this framework. It is not insignificant that the film was shot without any noteworthy participation from the Croatian film scene. All the key roles in the film, including the roles of all the Ustasha murderers, are played exclusively by Serbian actors and actresses. Because of this one-sided portrayal of Serb suffering, Dara from Jasenovac is an example of the discourse cultivated by Serbian nationalist politicians in the 1980s and 90s, both in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as in Serbia itself. The Milosevic regime and Serbian nationalist leaders in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina were frightening their compatriots that under the new nationalist rule of Croats and Muslims, they would face a repeat of the horrors of World War II. To conclude, instrumental post-Yugoslav cinema, which in the first decade of the 21st century seemed to be basically extinguished, is very much alive and kicking. Historical revisionism, self-victimization, supporting presumed national interests, and vindicating national ideologies and myths are the focal points of such cinema. The research of such films coincides with the rise of populist politics in the region in the last decade and a half. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleš. Thank you for this concise presentation, which I think was very interesting, very telling. I think it also kind of made really this night thematic circle, back to the issue of authoritarianism and rising authoritarianism in a region, for example, right? Not just region, but globally. I think this is also some, on a way where what we wanted to do here, just thematically looking at the papers, I already kind of to say this saw this proposition that it will likely go in a way of questioning global situation, questioning, of course, the rising tensions. And here we are, right? We started with this in a way, and we definitely concluded with this. We started with, we started really with migration and climate crisis, but then we slowly got back to the issues, the challenges of tomorrow. But we have so many challenges. It's in an ideal world, the philosophers and humanists, would have at least 15 minutes for their presentation. But we unfortunately don't live in ideal world, and yet it seems that this is the least of our worries today. So thank you all for your presentations. There is it is still possible for a very, very short question, because who would I be if I just say go right now? We haven't yet been kicked out. So there is still a possibility. I will still open the floor for a short question, maybe a comment from one of you. Then we will need to go. But maybe there is a little bit, because I know that some of you still want to ask something. So please go on. And if you have any quip, any comment, anything at all, please ask our presenters until they are, as long as they are here. So. there anything? Or maybe the presenters to asking other presenters? Is there anything?
Yes, maybe for Valentina, if
Okay.
she's still present.
Valentina?
Of course.
Okay. I think you already did some field work, if I'm not mistaken, and I wonder if there happen to be some unexpected challenges while doing the research, maybe interviews, if you already started with this.
Thank you, Nina, for your question. Yes, first part of the field work was already conducted. As I'm not sure if I emphasized enough in my presentation, I've been part of this project since 2021, so I know them now for 5 years. What could be challenging in conducting the interviews is mostly like what we call positive discrimination in some sort, since they are highly satisfied with the goals and outcome of the project. So maybe some feedback can be highly influenced of the personal experience when it comes to evaluating development of this identity as a unifying factor and mechanism. But the rest, at the moment, I don't see as highly challenged due to the long presence on this and working on this project. So hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you, Valentina. Also, thank you, Nina, for your question, which kind of think make for a fitting end, because of course we are now looking forward with new topics, with new solutions. Philosophers discussed, but they ought to change something. That was something that Marx stated in the 19th century. He believed, at least, that we need to change the world. I do think we definitely need to change the world, given the situation that it is heading in. Hopefully we will at least be able to create a buzz, make a discussion, ask right questions, give right comments, for everyone, to actually go and maybe make this change toward the better. Because I don't want to think of how it will be, if it went for even worse, which unfortunately is not the trajectory that is impossible, right? So let's think very let's open optimist. Let's remain open for the for the optimism, and maybe look towards positive trends in the future. Even if we remain wary against the rising authoritarian, the lack of to say care for maybe people in dire need, with the migration issues, brain drains, and so many challenges that we are faced with. So far, humanity has survived. We will survive. The question is, in what shape or form? Thank you very much for everyone that were here for our two panels, which I think were quite interesting and were very long. We are way above the time limit. So goodbye to everyone. See you next year, and enjoy. Think as much as you can. Right. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.